Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у щах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Хто води всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Наші
шануєм і ми, браття, у своїй сторонці. І душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 469 of the news, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine here on day 469. Nice. And also, I have to tell y'all something very important. We reported on this channel a few days ago that the counteroffensive had begun. And that statement was true. At that point, the counteroffensive had begun, and from what we could tell, it was entirely probing attacks that the Ukrainians were launching and trying to see where the Russian lines truly were their weakest. As of right now, at the very moment we're running this stream, reports are coming out from Russian Telegram channels stating that in the southern area, and of course now at this point, it's no question about it where this counteroffensive is beginning. We're not going to get into the exact details, but massive artillery barrages have been levied against the Russians in the Zaporizhia Oblast, and the counteroffensive is in full swing. According to some of these Telegram accounts as well, Russian lines have already been shattered in one specific area, and Ukrainian forces are flooding through all three of the defensive lines at that point completely unopposed. At this going rate, we may be seeing that the Ukrainians reach their target, their estimated war goal in this counteroffensive within the next few days, or maybe even the next 2 weeks at the longest. It is an unbelievable moment, because at this point right now, on this channel, of course we won't be covering a large amount of it. We have a few video clips where you couldn't really tell where they were taken, but they were taken in the southern front. We can't really go into it much, of course, because of operational security reasons. But tonight, according to one Ukrainian soldier, is the night of nights. And tonight will be the very few hours, we're right now at this moment in Ukrainian time, at the break of dawn. We will see what the Ukrainians were able to do as dawn breaks, and how quickly they'll be racing behind the Russian Siegfried line that's pretty much in this area, and how successful they were at achieving victory within the first few hours of the full-on counteroffensive, and not just the probing attacks we saw a few days ago. And of course,
I have a feeling they're going to hit them pretty hard. It would be my guess.
From what we are hearing right now, and we're not, of course, we're hearing nothing from the Ukrainian military, but from pro-Russian bloggers and from Russian commanders in the field that are telling these Russian bloggers some information, they're saying that the Russian lines are dissolving right now in several places, but one place there is a clear breach. Of course, I have seen that on the internet today, exactly where that breach is supposedly at, and also how many Ukrainian forces are involved and everything else, because Russian Telegram channels are trying to put out as much information as possible about it. But I'd also like to let y'all be fully aware that while that information is out there, y'all can do y'all's part in helping out the Ukrainian war effort by not sharing that information and limiting its spread as much as possible. Loose lips do sink ships, and in the process of this counteroffensive, loose lips can get a Ukrainian soldier's life ended early. And so do not share any sensitive information whatsoever about the current Ukrainian counteroffensive. If you see it, ignore it. You never saw it. Don't tell anyone what has been said either. Do not say anything about the counteroffensive. It is ongoing. We can confirm that. It appears that it's being met with incredibly good success, but beyond that, information should be kept to a bare minimum about the counteroffensive until the Ukrainian government is comfortable with stating some information about what's happening, or until Ukrainian units themselves, of course, put through the ringer. Of course, Ukrainian military units, much like U.S. military units, actually have a bit of a censor going on. Their S6 will usually, well, S6 is usually what it is in military battalion, but they'll usually put it up to command to see if that's safe to put out, and then they'll put it out. That happened during the Balaklia offensive and the Kherson offensive, so let's wait until the Ukrainian government or the Ukrainian military starts putting out hardcore information about where they are, and then we'll start reporting on that. Not only that, but this channel, in a small way, well, actually in a massive way, really, had its own major offensive on Sunday of this week. And it was able to pass $1 million raised in support of Ukraine through all of the fundraisers that we have ever run. And in celebration of that, now we of course have to mercilessly plug this because this is going to be here for 2 weeks, actually. We decided that last night. But it is still a limited edition merch run. And you can go to our merch store, link in the description below on this stream, and you can get yourself some $1 million merch to celebrate being here on Sunday night when that fundraiser reached over $22,637, I believe, which was the exact amount we would have needed to have passed $1 million raised. And you can get yourself some merch, and you can support this channel and help us to keep this thing running, and you can also get something commemorative out of that merch run, out of that fundraiser through this merch run. And so make sure to click on the link in the description below and get some of this cool stuff if you want to celebrate that with us. And so with that,
and also, once again, big shout out to Elizabeth from California for designing the really cool artwork. I have to give her credit because it was tremendously cool artwork.
And it is really cool artwork. I also have to say that as well. She did an amazing job, and she was the one who gave us this artwork. It was absolutely incredible, and we are very proud to know that there are such skilled artists here in the Lee Spring Army that were able to help us to get out something to celebrate $1 million raised with. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from that quick merciless plug. We rarely ever do merciless plugs. That's one we have to do, though. We are pretty much obligated by the labor union to do that. But anyways, moving on from that and on into tonight's news, we are going to be starting here in the Zaporizhzhia front line. Because, of course, this is where all of the action is going down, and this is where the Russian lines have broken. Of course, we're not going to get into a frontline analysis at all tonight. I'm just going to show you all some of the video clips of what has been happening there. And so starting off, in Volodar, we saw that Madyar is, of course, returned. Now, that's one thing we can confirm, is that Madyar and his unit largely operates in between Marinka and Volodar, although their exact location is, of course, kept largely secret. But we can see that Madyar was showing off his toy collection today. And I gotta say, it's a really extensive one as well. So here's his collection. Dude, he's just got boxes and boxes of these, and the cameraman's been there for like 9 hours. He's sitting there and he's like, this one is also one of my favorites as well, you see. He's like explaining it all.
На базі 7-ї рами перевищувати $400 США. Коли мова йде про збільшення батареї для подальшення відстані, окей, доплачуємо за батарею. У всіх інакших випадках, незалежно від виробника, справедлива ціна на аналогічний дрон складає $400. Саме така сума.
And we see him continuing to explain the drones that he has here. And of course, an interesting variety using all kinds of warheads and also all kinds of drones.
Виробляються на незалежній виробничій лінії високої потужності у одній з країн світу.
Man, he's like pulling out the sales tactics. I'll take two.
I know, man. He's like trying to do the hard sale.
25 крил-ретрансляторів у тиждень. Станом на
And of course, the video keeps on going probably for hours, I would guess, because Madyar is not just the commander of Madyar's birds, which is famously known throughout the war for revolutionizing drone warfare, but he is also a large drone aficionado and techie himself, so he's actually coming from an area of expertise, an area of experience, when he talks about these drones. And you can see his passion come to life whenever those FPV drones slam right into a Russian squad. Of course, through his, I guess you could say, his passion coming to life, some Russian soldiers have their life ended, but still, it is quite an interesting hobby, and I gotta say, he's certainly showing that it has a place on the battlefield, and he really loves those drones. And also, it is great to see the return of Madyar, because we don't really get as many videos from Madyar and Madyar's birds as we used to back when they were in Bakhmut. It has been a marked decrease, but it is still great to see him every once in a while and great to see the things he's been doing. With that, we're now going to be moving on over into some of the more serious videos that were taken around where the, what should we call it? The showdown is him? It's not even really a showdown. It's more like just a blitz. We're going to call it the blitz for the rest of the night because it's not a showdown. The Russians are just getting beat to death. So, you know, it's more of just a blitz that the Ukrainians are running here. But in the area of Staromanivka, we saw that a decent amount of Russians in this area was hit by Ukrainian artillery before the night even fell today. And so here's the clip. Also, let me mute that here real quick. But we can see the Russians wandering around a BMP of theirs. And we can see it's a pretty large group of them here at this APC. And all of a sudden, the video ends. Very suspenseful. But they didn't get a hit, but it is a massive amount of Russian forces that were in that clip. And fairly interesting to see because it also looked like they were quite disorganized and may have been having a little bit of a tough time as well, as you may see. But with that, we're now going to be moving on to our next clip where we can see that the Ukrainian drone forces are, of course, doing their best efforts. Of course, these drones are a large inspiration coming from Magyar's birds, and of course, we just saw Magyar a second ago. But we can see that Magyar's concept of drones in this war has, of course, flourished across the entirety of the front, as we've been seeing the entire war. And we can now see that Ukrainian units across the southern front are using them to hit high-value targets. And when I say high-value, I'm talking about some of the most expensive anti-aircraft systems you could imagine, such as the Pantsir. And so here's the clip. We can see our first drone flying into a Russian radar installation used to guide the anti-air systems. You see another drone watching from the distance and now flying on into the installation and hitting a trunk. We can now see another one coming into another installation. This one once again operating a radar relay. And that one actually appears to probably be the command station of an S-400 battery. We have seen a command vehicle like that one destroyed before in the area of Oleski before the flood. And it appears that this one is also part of an S-400 battery with the actual launching systems being in the distance. But this is the nucleus of how an S-400 battery runs. And seeing a radar vehicle like this, there's only one per battery being destroyed along with this command vehicle, means that this entire battery, this entire S-400 battery, which may consist of around 8 S-400 launchers, is going to be out of action until they get a new command vehicle or a new radar vehicle. We see that FPV drone hitting there. We see another one coming in onto another radar relay, this one closer to a tree line, and that one we couldn't really get a good look at, unfortunately. We now see this one flying in as well to hit another installation, and we can see now an explosion on one of those radar relays. Of course, it is amazing to see that the Ukrainians are using these relatively inexpensive and easy-to-make drones to destroy pretty much priceless equipment of the Russian army.
And wait, were those Switchblade 600s? I saw Mark say that.
Switchblades? I don't know. They may be. It does use an English interface, so it may be a Switchblade. Who really knows? But we don't actually get to see them. We only get to see their FPV cameras, so sadly we can't really confirm what kind of drone it is, but the explosions were quite sizable, so may have been in a Switchblade, may have not been, who really knows? But still, we can see that the Ukrainians are using these incredibly inexpensive drones to destroy what is to the Russians priceless equipment. And of course, we can put a price on them. These kinds of radar installations, probably around $20 million a pop. They're actually more expensive than the anti-aircraft vehicles like the Pantsirs, because radar technology, even while it's widespread, it is still incredibly expensive. However, what's very important and priceless about these vehicles that makes them far more valuable than just the sheer cost of them is that these are the eyes of Russian air defense in this area of the front line. With these being destroyed, the Russians are completely blind to any aircraft flying in the skies, whether they be Ukrainian or their own. And that means that Ukrainian air support may be able to operate a lot more efficiently and with a lot more leeway than it would have been if it wasn't for these drones taking out these radar installations like we're seeing here. And of course, that is key counteroffensive activities right there to start targeting the air defense's eyes and ears to make sure that they can operate. And so with that, we're now moving on to our next clip. We located this one to the Poltava area, but I would like to make this very clear that all of the markers that show anything that looks like Ukrainian activity are purposely misplaced. They are in the southern front, yes, but we don't put them in the exact place that they would most likely be for operational security reasons, of course. But moving on into the area of Poltavka, we saw a Ukrainian 2S3 firing at Russian forces in the distance. Of course, this was one of the SPGs that was conducting one of those massive artillery barrages we are hearing about right now as Ukrainian forces begin to break the Russian lines. And here's the clip. You hear them getting the order to fire. We now hear them firing. And it seems as though due to the rate of fire, that is most likely their ranging shot. And with that, that is the end of the clip. But these great artillerymen right here, with the impeccable accuracy that the Ukrainian artillerist has been known for ever since the start of the war, are going to be helping to push the Russians back. Ukrainian artillery has been one of the most important parts of the war, at least for the Ukrainian side, really for both sides for that matter. And these guys are probably landing accurate shots after this main one right onto Russian forces that are going to help Ukrainian infantry to break their way through the Russian lines in multiple parts of the southern front and begin racing towards their objectives. Honestly, I'm trying to keep calm tonight and make sure I talk slowly. Y'all may be noticing that, because it is very exciting news, and it's very easy for me to get really excited, and when I do, my speech begins to get far worse. So I'm trying to keep it slow, trying to keep it calm, although this is incredibly exciting news. Moving on to our next bit, which we put just a little bit of ways in between Huilopol and Orikhiv, we also saw two Ukrainian Mi-24s firing off rockets at the Russian forces. This was actually filmed during the daylight hours, I would say around 10 to 12 hours ago, and this would be before the massive artillery barrage that is occurring at this moment. And also we're going to be viewing that, but we can see the Mi-24 flying forward over the burned out fields, tilting upwards, and of course firing off its rockets. We can see that it's popping flares as it begins to veer hard left to get out of there, and we can now see the second Mi-24 coming on up. We can now see it tilting up as well, popping off its flares, and now firing off its rockets. You now see that Mi-24 also making a hard left turn. That is actually a hard left turn for Mi-24, by the way, and now popping off its flares and flying off into the distance. And with that, those are all of the video clips that we actually have that we can associate to the Southern Front. And of course, it is a slaughter from what we hear right now, especially from Russian sources about what's happening down there. And I have to make the note multiple times tonight that we cannot get into exact details just yet on what is happening. The counteroffensive, at least in full, the counteroffensive has been going on for around, I believe, 2 days at this point, 2 to 3 days. But the counteroffensive in full, where the actual pushes happen, just started around 6 hours ago. So we'll be waiting for that counteroffensive and its push to once again make about 24 hours worth of progress, and then we'll begin reporting on what we knew about the counteroffensive and where they were around 24 hours ago. Now, I gotta say, the story, Matthew, of the Ukrainians once again breaking through the Russian lines isn't that big of a fish to fry, you know, at least in terms of putting the story out there, because we've seen throughout multiple counteroffensives that the Ukrainians have done incredibly well. So, you know, once again, as the saying goes, it's not that big of a fish to fry. However, a BMP that we saw crossing the Dnipro River today ended up getting a pretty big fish that they'll have to fry. I've never heard of a fisherman using an APC to catch fish, but I guess there's a first time for everything. So I'm going to show you this clip where this BMP driver ended up catching a fish. I'm not even lying. Here's the video. Here comes the fish, and it just falls right into his hatch as he's driving this thing across the river.
Oh, is that those carp?
I don't know. I don't really like that thing is huge. Like
yeah,
that's
a big fish.
That is a big fish right there. I'm not even lying. That is a big fish to fry. And it goes right down the driver's hatch. And you can see the driver like, what the hell? And then he like tries to not be distracted by it, although he's still looking down at it. He just keeps on trying to keep the BMP moving. I gotta tell you, that's wild. You rarely ever see a fish hop into the hatch of a BMP, but that's one of the first ever times we've seen that. This may become a new way for Ukrainians to fish. And we now see that they actually took the fish and cooked it up.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Man, that honestly kind of looks a little good. But with that, that's the end of that clip. And I gotta say, man, that is incredibly hilarious that thing hopped up right into the hatch. And then they immediately cut after that clip to them actually cooking that fish. That is hilarious. And they sadly didn't fry it. It looks like they boiled it. But hey, I mean, like, you know, tomato, they still caught a fish with a BMP. That is a bit of an accomplishment. Really what they need to do, Matthew, you know how you have, like, those kill marks on the side of vehicles where you have, like, the outline of a tank? They need to put the outline of a fish on the side of that BMP, because I think it's the only BMP in the war that has a confirmed kill on a fish.
Yes, probably so.
Man, and I gotta tell you, man, they're going to be saying that is an absolute, I guess you could say, a real big fish story whenever those guys talk about what happened there. But luckily, they have a video to show it, trying to throw as many puns in as I can. But with it, we're now going to be moving on from the Zaporizhia area as a whole and the entirety of the southern front line Although I have to say, I'm going to be honest, Matthew, before we move on, just giving a little side note here. This week has had at least one of the craziest videos we've ever seen of the war each day. Like yesterday, it was the tank house. Today, it is using a BMP to fish. Like, the videos are getting crazier as things start heating up. And hopefully, they keep on showing us crazy stuff like that because it's just hilarious. But moving on down into something that is not as hilarious, of course, as the Zaporizhia counteroffensive and a fish landing into the middle of a BMP. Of course, the flood waters in the Novikakhovka area and further south into the Dnipro River are still incredibly high. And we can see that the Ukrainians are conducting search and rescue efforts, trying to evacuate people from the flooded areas. And we can also see that, once again, Russian forces apparently have no communications in this part of the line whatsoever, because even today there was video footage coming out of Russian forces still attempting to evacuate from the floodplains. This is one of those videos right here. We can hear the Russians yelling for them to evacuate, and we can now see the Russian team coming out of their positions and trying to hop onto this boat to get out of here as the floodwaters continue to stay level.
А вон же двенашка, что они туда не пошли? Вон, видишь, торчат вот эти палки. Давай здесь, давай здесь. Иди сколько можешь, иди аккуратно. Да идите до края, чтобы вы понимали, где край. До края, до края.
The brave Russian soldier, bled, Matthew. They faced down Nazis in Germany in 1945. They faced down Afghans, bled. But water? Hell no. Water?
Oh, they're so brave.
No, do not walk through water, bled. We can do everything but that, bled.
Прямо, прямо.
And we hear them yelling for these guys, hey guys, we know you're weighted down like stones by all of your gear, but just come on out like neck deep in water that's probably going about 10 miles an hour. Nothing could go wrong. It's not like you're going to drown or anything.
Парни, аккуратнее.
Oh, so scared of the little water.
So scared of water, bled. And
This
that's
is that special operation water, special water.
Man, that is that special drowning operation water right there. You walk out deep enough in that, you just get swept away and you're never seen again. But with that, that's the end of that clip. And sadly, they cut it off right before they started trying to pull these guys over the side of this boat. From what we assume, it's kind of like one of those normal boats you'll see at the lake if you ever have an outing on the lake. And it's probably going to be really difficult to pull these guys up the side of this thing and onto the boat, considering that they're laden with gear. And also, they're now waterlogged, so that adds a little bit of weight to them. And then the guys on the boat, you know, there's only a few of them. Yeah, that whole thing's a disaster from beginning to end. But once again, no communications amongst Russian forces, and it appears that their evacuation has been incredibly sluggish from the floodplain. In fact, in some places, there are no evacuations going on whatsoever. And while they are taking care of their own soldiers, in a small way. I mean, you know, if you go by Russian terms, they are certainly taking care of him, but it's nothing massive by any means. They're not evacuating any civilians whatsoever from the area. They're leaving them to their own devices, and if they drown, well, the Russians just chalk that up to bad luck. So evacuations are beginning to happen from Oleski, on the other side of the Dnipro River, and many of y'all may remember that throughout the entirety of the war, whenever we've given an analysis of this area, Oleski has been the problem if the Ukrainians wanted to cross the river, because they would have to move down this highway from the Antonovsky Bridge and then into the town of Oleski. And that has been considered a tall, if not impossible, goal for Ukrainian forces throughout the entirety of this war. And due to the massive flood caused by the dam rupturing just yesterday, this Oleski town is now practically a part of the Dnipro River, and some people are taking advantage of that, and they're ferrying people from Oleski, of course the Russian-controlled side of the river, across and into Kherson, so that way they can once again live within Ukrainian territory. And we can see a clip of that right here. You see them loading into boats. And we see a little dog over there in the other one. And they're about to start making the trek across the river from Oleski and on into Kherson.
Олег, пускай, я держу. Ну, скомари тут, конечно, каліровані. Ні.
You see them transferring some supplies.
Це не наш дрон. Це цей дрон, який...
Нам скидывали українську помощь.
Ні, так це... Ми воєнні. Ми воєнні, поняли? Ми тому не знаємо, чий це дрон.
We now see them trying to take the dog. The dog, of course, very scared to cross the water, and the guy just kind of like flings him onto the boat. From here, they'll now be ferried on across into the area of Kherson across the river.
Ти знаєш, що будеш другим? А девочку як звуть? Маша. Все, молодцы, детки.
Now, some of y'all may be wondering, why in the world are they transferring everything from one boat to the other, considering that they're still in Oleski in this video, and they haven't even begun to cross over to Kherson. The reason why they're switching them over in these boats, which many people may think is inefficient, is because if you take a look at the two boats, you can see that this one is actually operated by the guy on the boat. It's operated by oars. And rowing across a river that is in the middle of a flood that has currents that are as strong as 12 miles an hour on the surface is suicidal. They'll pretty much just get washed out to the sea, or they'll get caught on something and the boat will capsize and then they'll all drown. So the reason why they're switching them over to this boat is because it's actually a motorboat. It has a little outboard motor on the back of it, and that is strong enough to actually power against the current, or to kind of, I guess you could say, skim sideways across the current and make it to the other side of the river and bring this family to safety. But you have
that water is deceivingly fast. Like, it looks like it's not going really fast, but that strength behind it is something else.
And what's even scarier is that the water is actually a lot stronger and a lot faster under the surface than it is on the surface. So while it looks fast on the surface, it is far faster underwater. And on top of that, there's also pretty much like circulation, if that's a good way to say it, of the water, where the water kind of stays on the surface, and if you get under it, you pretty much just start tumbling from almost on the surface of the river to way below the surface of the river, and then back up again. There's really no way to get out of it. Once you get in it, you will drown. So they can't cross with oars, because God knows what would happen to if these folks tried to cross in a rowboat. So they have to get in a motorboat to try and cross the river. That's the whole reason why they're passing them over from one boat to the other. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little clip and on over into the city of Kherson itself. And many people yesterday wanted to insist that Kherson was safe. And Kherson was fine, because Kherson is on a hill, and that is actually correct. And the hill, in theory, would give Kherson a good amount of protection from these flood waters. However, large parts of Kherson have actually been seen to be submerged. From what we can tell, the center of the city here, where my mouse cursor is, this entire area is dry. However, this area, the Korabielny district, if I'm saying that correctly, almost the entirety of the Korabielny district is underwater, and also the Antonivka district up here is also completely underwater as well. The city of Kherson has around, I believe, let me make sure, let's actually get a number on this, population of Kherson. Around 300,000 people living in it, near to the start of this war. And so going off of the size of Kherson and just, evenly throwing the population across the entirety of the city, that means that probably around 150,000 people or 120,000 people currently have their houses submerged underwater and inside of a floodplain. And this is starting to cause a massive risk, of course, to the hundreds of thousands of people that are living in this area. And we can also see that they are now beginning evacuations in Kherson with a vehicle that we've covered a little bit on this channel before, the Sherp. We've finally seen the Sherp used, and it's being used to evacuate citizens from the flooded areas of the city of Kherson. So here's the clip.
Oh man, that is cool.
And I gotta say, that was a very lucky little shipment of Sherps that the Ukrainians got, because it appears that the Ukrainians ended up giving most of these, not to the army, but actually to forces, well, more so firefighters and police forces along the banks of the river. From what we understand, these are in every major city in Ukraine that is along a river, and they're using these to try and evacuate civilians from the area, and they're pretty much made for this task.
And aren't these made in Ukraine?
They are. They're actually made in Ukraine as well.
That's kind of bogging down.
But the Sherp is made for this. And we can see them opening up the rear latch and getting some people out.
I don't know how much space is actually on the inside of that thing.
I would assume it's probably about the size of like a van on the inside of that thing. I mean, it is huge. And I gotta tell you this, while this is, of course, an absolute disaster, the company that makes these Sherps is getting a lot of press because of these Sherps and what they're doing right now in Kherson. And we see them once
and
again.
Also, for everyone asking where you can get one of these, they're very expensive. I think they're like a few $100,000 a piece.
I think they are. I think they're, I mean, like, hell, we get Look Again, Sherp for sale.
But I'd imagine Sherp's probably donating a few to Ukraine, I'd imagine.
So let's see here. So a Sherp, this Sherp in particular, is $129,995. So about the price of a Mercedes S-Class. So they are fairly expensive. Actually, I'd say they're incredibly expensive. But if you're into the first responder field, like, hell, I can honestly see these things being used in Louisiana where flooding is common. They could use this thing plenty, and this is getting them a lot of good PR with first responders and the public the world over, because these things are certainly showing their salt as far as it goes into humanitarian search and rescue missions, like in the city of Kherson. They're amazing, and they're also a Ukrainian-made vehicle as well. But with that, we're now going to be moving on. But really, when you think about it, $130,000 for a pretty much a first responders or a search and rescue vehicle isn't really that much. Because I was actually talking to some firefighters the other day, and they were telling me that a stock fire truck, like the basic fire truck at this point, is getting around $450,000 for a single one in the United States. So when you really think about it, you could get 4 of these things for the cost of a single fire truck, and that's the stock version of a fire truck. No upgrades or anything.
That's true. Although the application of this seems kind of limited because there's so little space on the inside of it. So unless you're going across a river or some crazy environment, I think a fire truck would probably be better.
But I've got to be honest, though. I got to make an argument for this thing. We're kind of getting sidetracked here. This thing on the Mississippi River or any city near the Mississippi River, like Baton Rouge or New Orleans, I mean, that is indispensable. Or hell, even in Florida, I could see this thing being used in Tampa and along the coastline cities like Jacksonville, because if there's ever a storm surge there, those things are going to be doing incredibly well in that part of the country. So I think they would be great in places like that. But moving on from our side note there, a rabbit hole, it is amazing to see that Ukrainian first responders are selflessly acting in this area to try and get folks out of the floodplains, and we can even see some citizens taking incredibly brave and very risky actions on their own to cross the Dnipro River and try and help other folks who have been in Russian-occupied territory this entire time to get to the other side and into liberated Ukrainian territory. It is amazing to think of all of these selfless efforts that are happening in the area of Kherson right now, and there are certainly many people who are becoming heroes because of what's going on and the terrible catastrophe that has happened in this area. Meanwhile, in Russia, things are not going good for the Russian army. They're still not going good for the Russian army. These guys have been here for an entire week, and they still haven't been pushed out, and they're actually claiming that they're taking more settlements. And this is massive news. But speaking of massive news, we've been covering a lot of massive news tonight. We've asked y'all many leading questions of tonight's news so far, and I want to hear out what y'all have been saying about some of these questions that have been posed to y'all at large. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so for our very first poll of the night, it says former NATO Secretary Rasmussen says individual NATO members say they may send troops to Ukraine, and what are your thoughts? 57% said good idea, it might actually happen. 10% said unsure. 19% said NATO should coordinate the plan, and 13% said bad idea, that would be detrimental. And just for some context, the former NATO secretary was saying that if an agreement or security guarantees could not be reached at the Vilnius summit in July, then some of these NATO members, like Poland, might decide to send in troops into Ukraine on their own accord without NATO's blessing. Kind of interesting development. I'm kind of shocked to hear that. While I have advocated to sending in troops to secure the power plant, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, it's kind of interesting to hear them actually saying it out loud and not just behind closed doors. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say it was very interesting poll results, and I think that NATO should certainly coordinate. I would certainly agree with that. It wouldn't be prudent for NATO forces to just show up in Ukraine unannounced and the Ukrainian government not know what's happening. So I would say they certainly need to coordinate, or they need to coordinate with each other as well to figure out what they're going to be doing. But as far as it goes with a NATO response in Ukraine, I think that it should be a very limited response, if any, at the moment, and we should make sure to create a neutral zone or a security perimeter around the ZMPP power plant, and to also ensure that safe operations of the plant continue. NATO getting involved in outright war or outright conflict in Ukraine, I don't think we need to get to that point yet. I think we would probably get to that point if we try to go to the ZMPP and create a security zone around it, and then the Russians began to attack NATO forces. I'm pretty sure then we would get involved in the armed conflict. So no reason to jump the gun, just wait for that to happen, and then we have a pretty good justification then and there. So I would certainly agree coordination needs to happen, but I'd also like to see that it actually does occur, that we end up there and we end up creating a security perimeter around that power plant. The Russians have already proven at Novokakhovka that allowing them control of important sites like a dam, which could end up screwing everyone over if it's blown up, they've already proven that they can't take care or maintain things like that. And so the concept of them still having a control or grasp over a nuclear power plant, one of the largest in Europe, that seems to be asinine and stupid at this point to allow that to continue. And so I would say that we certainly need to have some kind of response to create a security perimeter around that power plant. And so with that, I hope
just hypothetically, if Poland were to decide to send in troops on their own accord without NATO's blessing, that would create a weird situation that NATO has never encountered before. Because how would that work if they send in troops, Russia attack those troops? Would that trigger Article 4 and 5, or would that be considered excluded from the NATO alliance?
That wouldn't trigger Article 4 or Article 5, because I don't think that falls within the confines. Let's actually read the NATO Charter again, and let's see what it says about Article 4 and Article 5 in that regard. So, Article 4. The parties will consult together, and we already know that, but what in the world will they consult about? The parties agree that an armed attack against one or more of them in Europe or North America shall be considered an attack against them all, and consequently they agree that if such an armed attack occurs, each of them, in exercise of the right of individuals or collective self-defense recognized by Article 51 of the Charter of the United Nations, will assist the party or parties so attacked by taking forthwith, individually and in concert with the other parties, such action as it deems necessary, including the use of armed force, to restore and maintain the security of the North Atlantic area. Any such attack, and all measures taken as a result thereof, shall immediately be reported to the Security Council, and then that's all the Security Council, blah. But moving on down into the Article 6 area, which actually talks about what would really constitute an attack against NATO or a NATO country. For the purpose of Article 5, an armed attack on one or more of the parties is deemed to include an armed attack on the territory of any of the parties in Europe and North America, on the Algerian departments of France, which no longer exist, on the territory of Turkey, or on the islands under the jurisdiction of any of the parties in the NATO or in the North Atlantic area, north of the Tropic of Cancer. The Tropic of Cancer being way down around here, I believe. It's somewhere in like the Saharan area. But anyways, moving on back into Article 6. On the forces, vessels, or aircraft of any of the parties, when in or over these territories, meaning the territories of their home country, or any other area in Europe, in which the occupation forces of any of the parties were stationed on the date when the treaty entered into force. So that means that Ukraine wouldn't be covered. Or the Mediterranean Sea, or the North Atlantic area, north of the Tropic of Cancer.
So would you have to fulfill both of these bullet points, or just either or?
I think it's just either or, because it says an armed attack on one or more of the parties is deemed to include an armed attack, and then it gives two options, pretty much, that it has to fulfill. It only has to be one or the other. It could be both at the same time, but it appears that, interestingly enough, this would not fall within Article 5, according to what Article 6 says, because this pretty much states that it had to be an occupation force in an area where the treaty was signed. And when this treaty was signed, which would have been in 1949, there were no NATO occupation forces within Ukraine. There were NATO occupation forces as far as West Germany, and that's about as far as they would go, and also Austria as well. So
it's looking like if Poland sent in some troops and they were attacked, that they probably would not be covered under the Articles 4 or 5.
Yeah, it doesn't look like they would be covered, so they would be largely just joining the war on their own, completely detached from the NATO alliance, and the NATO alliance could end up pretty much brushing anything that happens to Polish forces off to the side and say that they're not guaranteed any NATO protections. Because according to how we're reading the treaty, it appears that they wouldn't be. So that doesn't pose a massive NATO risk. That's not really anything that I guess you could say the UK, the US, or France has to step up and ask, well, how is that going to affect the alliance? Because it really won't, actually. So they could actually move in and do whatever they wanted to. They could be the ones to set up the security perimeter around the Enerhodar power plant, and there really wouldn't be any consequences to NATO at large. Although Russia would probably want to say that that is direct NATO involvement, and then we would probably get involved anyways, because the Russians would try and claim that all of NATO is involved, and then attack Poland on that point for the large part. But anyways, with that, I hope we addressed that fairly well, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our second poll says, despite the summer offensive supposedly starting, Bakhmut remains the center of hostilities, and what are your thoughts? It looks like 35% said Ukraine is making the right move, 33% said I don't buy it, it's probably because of OPSEC, 14% said unsure, and 19% said Ukraine should stop fixating on it. And for me, I fall in the 33%. I personally don't buy that Bakhmut is the center of hostilities. Ukraine is withholding information, understandably, to protect their operational security, and they're not going to tell us exactly where the new center of hostilities is going to be, but I'm sure there's a much larger one somewhere else. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that as of right now, Bakhmut is certainly not the center of hostilities. The center of hostilities is somewhere in the Zaporizhia front line at the moment. So I would say that I would have to go with the 33%. It certainly isn't. As far as the press goes, which is probably... And who put that information out, Matthew? Was it the press?
Let's see here. It was... Can't remember. I think it was The Guardian, maybe?
Yeah, it was the press. The press is the one saying that Bakhmut is still the center of hostilities, but that's because that's what Ukraine
Oh,
wants
no,
to...
no. Let me clarify. That came from, I believe, The Guardian, if I'm not mistaken, but it was taken from a quote from a Ukrainian soldier.
Huh. I would actually have to say that as of right now, that statement may have been true about 16 hours ago, but as of right now, that is certainly not true. Right now, the southern front is certainly the center of hostilities, and Bakhmut is going to start becoming a sideshow at this point. Kind of like how Severodonetsk and Lysychansk eventually became a sideshow. This is also going to turn into a sideshow as well. It really has already become the sideshow. But with that, I hope that does address that, in my opinion, fairly well. Well, I mean, like, hell, that isn't really even an opinion. I mean, like, if what we're hearing is correct from Russian propagandists and what's going on in the Zaporizhia front right now, it has become fact that Bakhmut is no longer the center of hostilities. It's the southern front that's now the center. But, of course, we'll have to wait and see another 24 hours and what the Ukrainians were able to do today, tomorrow. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and the next poll says, satellite images show the Novakakovka Dam was damaged days before collapse. And what are your thoughts? 43% said we need more info to make a conclusion. 26% said that didn't cause the collapse. 11% said unsure, and 20% said maybe that did cause it. And for me, I would say we definitely need a lot more info before we can reach a surefire conclusion that the damage that was there prior to the attack supposedly caused the collapse. I will say that if the images show that, then we have to give some credence to it. We can't just totally dismiss it. But I don't see anything right now to suggest that it was anything other than an attack. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that we would need a little bit more evidence for sure, at least in my opinion. And once again, I want to say this. When I say stuff, sometimes it sounds authoritative like fact, but once again, there's no clear answer to these polls. All of them are have about the same validity as the other. So this is just my opinion. Just want to put that out there just in case anyone's thinking I'm putting this out there as fact. But I think we would need much more evidence to assert that the dam was damaged before it went up. Well, more so went down, because from everything we're seeing and everything that we were able to collect, it appears that this was most likely a deliberate action. And if the dam was damaged, and I've seen where people said it was damaged, they said, look, it was letting out water, it must be damaged. If that was the case, then why in the world was the water able to build up so high? It was the highest it ever got in the reservoir's history. How in the world was it able to do that if it was damaged for so long? You know, that's something I'm not really getting right there. And I've got to be honest with y'all, speaking about this, I saw a clip today. I don't know if many of y'all have seen it. And many of y'all will probably have great scorn at the guy I'm about to mention here. But the guy, of course, was the Tucker Carlson. And there's been a video going around today, and I've had the misfortune of seeing it, where he is saying that the Ukrainians blew up the dam, and his only proof, and I wish I actually put this clip in because, you know, I don't really like to comment on other news reporters and stuff because are they really even news reporters? But what this guy was saying was completely unfounded. I was like, this guy is still trying to act like he's peddling news? I mean, hell, honestly, now I see why Fox fired him, because this guy just comes up with stuff out of thin air. He sat there and said, and these are the points he said, man, that Ukraine would have blown up the dam. It provides drinking water to only Crimea. It doesn't provide drinking water to anyone else anywhere. And the Black Sea Fleet's in Crimea.
Yeah, but he's not examining the other side of the argument. And he's surely smart enough to know that by blowing that dam up, a lot of Ukrainians are going to die. The reports aren't coming out yet, but there will be casualties because there are people that don't have quick mobility. They can't get out of the way quick enough to, you know, avoid getting swept up in the water. So that's absolutely absurd.
Yeah, and also another thing that I didn't get is that he said the Black Sea Fleet is in Crimea. It's like, yeah, but they don't really need the water from the dam because, you know, it's a navy and ships exist in the water. So it's not really like they're having to pump water from the reservoir and into the Black Sea for them to exist. I was like, I'm not getting, I didn't get at all where in the world he was coming from, because the only things he said was that drinking water goes to Crimea, and he made it sound like it only goes to Crimea, and the dam was made by the Russians, apparently, although it's in Ukraine, and it's always been in Ukraine. It was built during the Soviet time, so it's not really a Russian dam, it's a Soviet dam, and then they controlled it, so obviously the Ukrainians must have blown it up. And then he also came up with something that was like half-assed. I don't even know where in the world he got this from, but he claimed that according to the Washington Post, the Ukrainians took pot shots at the dam in December with American missiles just to try it out. And I was like, oh, do people really believe, and he's talking about American missiles as in HIMARS missiles, it's like, does he really think, well, I'm guessing people would believe if they don't know the explosive mass of a HIMARS missile, that a few 100 pounds of explosives is going to completely destroy a multiple dozens meter thick concrete dam with just 1 or 2 missiles? You can't. I mean, like, it takes thousands of pounds of explosives, really, to even cause a crack in the dam. And that's the story he's trying to tell. I was like, that is a lame one. And, you know, of course, I don't mean to, if you like this guy, don't mean to crap on him or anything, you know, unduly or anything. We're not trying to make it seem like we're picking a side here or anything, because obviously the guy is also not just a anti-Ukrainian, but he's also a bit of a political figure as well. But this guy, I don't even know how in the world people call this guy a journalist still, because he's just spewing crap out there and it doesn't even have any backing or real facts or information behind it. He just says stuff.
Just to give him the benefit of the doubt, did he show any type of evidence, video, documents, or anything?
No, actually, I think we can pull up that clip here and show it to everyone, because I honestly want to show you all this clip, because you won't believe it. He just doesn't show anything. He just says stuff and just does the trust me bro move that everyone does. But let me go see.
Will we get copyrighted for showing it though? Because we're on, like, we're bad mouthing him, so he might copyright us or something.
Yeah, you're right. He might want. Well, wait a minute. If we're using it for commentary, I think it falls under Article 17, which is free use. So I think we would be okay. Well, Title 17. Sorry, it's not Article 17. It's Title 17. So let me go see if I can find it. It probably is on Twitter out there somewhere. And so let me
I see everybody begging us, please don't, please.
Oh, no one wants to see it?
I don't think so.
Yeah, we'll move on then, because honestly, I could do without seeing it again. But I couldn't believe that stuff today, and I feel like, and you know, and this is what we try and do on this channel, I feel like when people report the news, there ought to be some kind of a clear, surefire proof to what someone's saying. Like, for example, yesterday when we were talking about the Russians probably blew up the dam, we went and found stats that showed that the water level had risen. We went and found information that Zelensky was saying that they had mined the dam. We, you know, of course, referenced the 205th last year, saying that they had mined the dam as well, and everything else. So, you know, it's not like we didn't have any proof. We did. And I feel like that ought to be a journalistic standard, that if you want to say you're covering news, you must show proof to back up the claims you make. So we won't be showing that guy. I see a lot of people like, no, don't do it. We won't be showing that guy. But with that, I hope we addressed that fairly well, at least with everything concerning the dam and what's been happening down there. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And with that being said, we're all out of polls. So we're moving on to our super chat questions. And up first, we have the return of a channel legend, Joseph M. Sika.
No
he puts
way.
in a very generous $150 donation. And thank you very much, Joseph. That is very generous. And he says, other day, I was talking about crossing Havrlivka to Victoria. Water lane is probably way down upstream. Maybe now is the time to do a river crossing there. Pound the other side, smoke screens, and use those pontoon boats. Kick it, kick it.
And thank you so much for the support, Joseph Imsika. And I always love that kiki. And also, welcome back. We have not seen you in a while. And I got to thank you so much for the massive support. And of course, helping this channel to keep on running. And to address that is a very interesting point. The water level will be down way upstream, especially in the Novikakhovka Reservoir, and we'll probably also see that other dams like the Dnipropetrovsk Dam in Zaporizhia, and also I believe it's the Kamyansky Dam here near Dnipro, they'll probably begin to let out a good amount of water, so that way one side of the dam down here at Dnipropetrovsk doesn't end up drying out, because that can cause foundation issues for the dam. But upstream in this area, it probably will be far less of a crossing that they have to make. However, there is a hidden death trap when this water recedes. This soil has been underwater for decades at this point in this reservoir, and it is waterlogged to an unbelievable degree. And so any vehicle that will try and cross this, even a man or a person for that matter at all, trying to cross this waterlogged soil that will now be part of a drier riverbed, they will get bogged down so quickly it'll be impossible to cross. Really, the only way that one would be able to cross these reservoirs or former reservoirs would be if they're full, like right here, because once that water recedes and you see a much thinner area, and most of it is just wet marsh, it will be impossible to get any kind of vehicle through that at all, especially a tank or even an APC. Maybe even a Humvee wouldn't be able to get through that. It would just bog down and sink into the mud, and it would get stuck there, and a recovery vehicle would even be hard-pressed to get those vehicles out. So it is a good idea, but they would probably have to put out a lot of effort to get through the obstacles that will be posed by this emptied reservoir. They may have to try and lay out gravel road on top of it, so that way it at least doesn't allow the vehicles to sink into it immediately. Maybe try and put down some wood planks across it, but that could become cost prohibitive, and they could also start to run out of timber to do something like that for so long. They could try, but it would be very difficult to do. But I would certainly say it would be an interesting thing to see, but really, I think at this point, the entire area from Zaporizhia all the way down to the pretty much, I forgot what this is called, the Kimburn Spit, that's what it's called. This entire area is going to be uncrossable for anybody, probably for the rest of the war, I would say. But that's just my opinion. It may be possible, it's just that it would certainly pose a challenge due to how soft and mucky the ground will be in that reservoir once it begins to empty. Also, Mark said, on a hovercraft. And I don't know if the Ukrainians have any hovercrafts. Let's see if they do. Ukrainian Army equipment.
And also, Joseph said, by the way, to check out those 2 towns that he mentioned.
And I will make sure to check them out here in a second, but I want to see if they have a hovercraft. Also, Matthew, oh my god, look at the small arms list that they have now. It's literally every gun on Earth on Wikipedia. Man.
Oh, they got a nice selection.
Man, look at that one. The Malyuk? That kind of looks like a Hellion. Actually, no. Oh my god.
That's a hell of a vertical foregrip on that thing.
Dude, that's that Groza thing from Russia, but they made it look better. Ew! Ew! This thing is pretty much an AK, but they cut off the stock on the back of it, put the stock on literally the end of the lower receiver, and then just made it a bullpup. I don't know how I feel about that now. But anyways, getting on out of that list before we get distracted by literally the never-ending list of small arms that they have, and grenades, and everything else, let's get down and see if they have any hovercraft on this list. Oh my god, this list is literally endless. Like, I'm looking over here on the sidebar, and we are not even getting towards the midpoint right now. What the hell is that? Wait, they have a ferret? No way! They got one ferret.
What the hell are they using that for?
I don't even know. I don't even know what they'd use that for, but they have one of them, supposedly. Let's scroll on down. Let's scroll on down. Oh my god, man, this is literally a never-ending list of everything on Earth in one army. Man, the logistics have to be a pain. Like, they really do be. Man, I said they really do be, but that's got to be tough to deal with. And getting down, I think, kind of towards what would possibly be their amphibious stuff. But I'm not really seeing anything. At least yet. But we're going to keep going. We'll see a hovercraft if it pops out in front of us. I'm sure we'll see it. But I'm not seeing one yet. And we're keeping on going. Oh, wait a minute. We've gotten to the bridge layers. So, hovercrafts may be nearby. Ships and underwater vehicles. So they have this thing, the GSP-55, which is amphibious. They could possibly use that kind of like a hovercraft, but once again, it's tracked, so it would probably sink into the mud pretty quickly, although it is an amphibious vehicle. They do, however, have these things. I don't even know what the hell these are. It just kind of looks like a boat with wheels, but they have them. And let's see, what else do they have? They have, of course, ribs, different kinds of ribs. I love myself some ribs. They also have some patrol boats. They have a Sherp, the Scuttle over there, or the Shuttle.
The Shuttle.
Although I swear that said Scuttle. But I don't see any hovercraft. So it would be a possibility for them, but I think they would have to get a hovercraft from another country, because it doesn't appear that the Ukrainians have any, at least within the recognized inventory on Wikipedia. And of course, it's Wikipedia, so it may be incorrect, but we haven't seen any, we don't see any hovercraft whatsoever in any part of the Ukrainian armed forces, at least from what we can tell here. And the list keeps going. Oh my god, it literally does not end. Now we get to see all the camos they wear and all the helmets they use. Okay, so we've got the picture. They sadly do not have a hovercraft, but they could still try the crossing. It just would be fairly difficult and would take a decent amount of effort to do. But let's check out those towns. Other day I was talking about crossing Havyurlivka, so let's type that in. Havyurlivka in the Kherson Oblast. And so, let's see here. So here's Havyurlivka, which is a pretty good ways upstream of Novokakhovka. So it's in the reservoir right now. And let's see, what is the other town? To Victoria. So let's type that in. Victoria. Let's see if I can find that one. So that appears to be up there, at least according to that. Maybe I'm misspelling that. Nope, that is the right... No, wait a minute. In the Donetsk Oblast? I have a feeling it would be in the Kherson Oblast, but doesn't appear to be. So let's see what options we get. Oh, here we go. Maybe over here. Yep, that appears to be it. So we'll close that. Yeah, I'm guessing from around there to there. It's possible. It's certainly not out of the question that they could possibly try something like that, but it would still be a little difficult. Because, of course, the sides of what will then be a river will be nothing but slush ground that will be very difficult to get a vehicle across. They could try and do it with a hovercraft, but they would have to get a hovercraft, and then we would have to find out where that hovercraft would come from, how long it would take them to get there, how long the training would be, how rare the parts would be, how long could it be operational before it breaks down, how many of them would they need. They wouldn't just have one, they would need multiples of them, but it is possible. It just will be a little bit of a challenge.
I'm told that Ukraine makes or already has some hovercraft.
Let's type that in. Ukrainian hovercraft. We didn't see any in their army's inventory, but maybe they do have some hovercraft out there. So they have the Zuber class Elkak, which is the Project 1232.2. So let's see here. Let's go down here.
Did Ukraine invent the hovercraft?
I don't know. I think we may have ended up inventing the hovercraft, but they're a former operator, sadly. They had 4 of them, but all of them were scrapped in the late 90s and in 2000. So, sadly, they're gone, but not forgotten. Oddly enough, the Greeks actually have some, which is insane because they're broke, but Ukraine doesn't have any, which is just bizarre. So they did have them at a time, but they don't have them anymore. So they would have to get some from another country to be able to use. But these things are like massive, actually. They're like the size of a small frigate.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, that thing's huge. And imagine getting that thing there. Man, that would be a challenge. But still, those things are actually kind of neat looking, I'm not going to lie. It has that Soviet look to them, but still pretty okay, pretty neat looking. But with that, I hope we addressed that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for the support, Joseph, and being our small guy. You will always be remembered on this channel as the small guy, because you were always like, where are the smalls? And then the smalls finally arrived, and you weren't even here. And it made us sad, because we were like, dang it, the one night he should be here, he's not here. But still, thank you so much once again for the support, Joseph. I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you have helped to make this possible for so long. And thank you for appreciating this channel enough to find it worthwhile to support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to another channel legend, BC Skyman, who puts in a very generous $100 donation And thank you, BC, very much for that very generous support. He says, Russia definitely planted charges on the dam, and good job, guys. And I have to agree with you, BC, and also thank you for the kind words. It appears from Zelensky's statements made last year in October that they definitely did. And Russia didn't necessarily deny it either, I don't think. So, yeah, I think you're right.
And I thank you so much for the massive support, BC Skyman. And I would certainly agree that the Russians did plant the charges on that dam. Everything is pointing towards they would be the ones responsible for doing it. There is no way in hell that the Ukrainians could have inflicted that much damage onto the dam and then, you know, and then they're to blame for it. There's just no way. The explosive mass that was needed to create such a breach in that dam would have had to been something that you would have had to have planted onto the dam. And so that certainly proves that it was the Russians that did it, not the Ukrainians. That alone proves that. And also, I got to thank you so much for thanking us for doing a good job. We always try our best to make this as informational and educational as it can be, or more so entertaining in a way. And I'm glad to know that a lot of folks do enjoy this channel and always are watching. And I thank you so much for supporting this channel, because that's the only way we keep this channel running. And of course, I have to say, I thank all of our supporters who do support this channel. Y'all help us to pay the rent, or as we call it, keep the lights on. Y'all also help us to continue on doing everything behind the scenes that allows us to do this as a full-time job to make this news possible. And we are greatly appreciative of folks like you, Joseph Sika and BC Skyman, who support this channel, and everyone else who supports this channel, both massive support and smaller support, because all of y'all combined make this channel possible in every single way. And so with that, thank you so much once again, BC Skyman. I hope that does address that fairly well, and thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the final question of the segment, and then we'll be moving back into the news.
All right, and the final super chat of this segment goes to another channel legend. We have 3 in a row.
No way.
Mark, Field Marshal of the LSA. He puts in a $100 donation, and thank you, Mark, very much for the very generous support as well. He says, I'm a small guy too. Rock on, small guys.
Rock on, little men. Rock on, blade. And I got to thank you so much for the support, Mark. Field Marshal of the LSA. It's always Field Marshal. We must always have that. And also, Matthew, Mark said that he would not accept the promotion unless if there was a poll run on whether he should be promoted to Field Marshal or not. So another poll is in store for you tonight, my good co-host and brother. We must run another poll whether Mark will become a Field Marshal or not, because I certainly think that he deserves the rank of Field Marshal, and I think that everyone should vote that he becomes a Field Marshal. So I'm going to tell y'all how to vote on this poll. Vote yes for him becoming a Field Marshal. I certainly think he should be one. And I've got to thank you so much for the massive amount of support, Mark, and of course being one of those folks who have helped this channel to keep on running for so long, and also the person that we can personally hold accountable for us reaching over $1 million. You've been a massive part of our channel's fundraisers for an incredibly long time, and have also been a massive part in supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running. And if it wasn't for folks like you, Mark, this channel wouldn't be able to get to where it was today, and it wouldn't be credited with raising $1 million. And I got to thank you so much once again for the massive amount of support once again tonight and helping this channel to keep on running, and I hope that does address that fairly well. We're going to let that poll run for a little bit. It looks like it's well over 80%. It's at 90%. But thank you so much once again, and I hope we addressed all of those fairly well. And with that, we're now going to be moving on.
I move for a summary judgment on the poll. It's very evident at this point that Mark has been approved for the promotion, so I say go ahead and give it to him.
I would say let's give it to him. He is now a Field Marshal. So we can now close out that poll, because we've gotten 600 votes in, and they're coming in at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and 90%, it's a consistent 90%, are saying yes. So Mark is now,
let's go.
Mark has now been granted the rank of Field Marshal of the Lee Spring Army. Certainly deserves it, and it is a well-earned rank. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on out of this question segment and on into the Russian news. Because interestingly enough, Governor, we see that they are not showing how much ground the Russian Liberation Army has actually gained inside of the area of Russia. They're only showing this much. But today we confirmed that they do hold Shebekino, and they also hold Novaya Tobolzhanka. Starting off with our first clip here inside of Shebekino, we saw that a massive fire broke out inside of the town due to Russian shelling and bombardments. And we can see the fire right there. It appears to have most likely hit some kind of an oil storage depot. And from what we were able to collect, this was also due to Russian artillery bombardments onto the town of Shebekino now that the RLA controls the area, and they were the ones to have caused this fire. We're now going to be moving on into our next clip of news in the area of Shebekino, where we also saw RDK units, now of course absorbed into the RLA in the Belgorod region. And of course, considering, and I've got to say this because I have to make this very clear, because some people are starting to make a stink about this, I report the news, and of course, I know what the RDK is, but they are the guys there. So they're the ones I report the news on. If I ended up not reporting the news on folks that some people disagreed with, I wouldn't be covering this war, because I wouldn't be able to talk about what the Russians are doing in Ukraine, because I don't like the Russians, and y'all don't like the Russians, so I wouldn't be able to cover that news. I honestly find it really sad that I have to make that statement, because of course, because we're covering them, people for some reason are trying to make the assumption that we support these people. We don't support these people at all. We don't support really any of the political affiliations or thoughts of any unit that is involved in this war, but nonetheless, they are the people who are there, so we're reporting on them. But we can see a montage of what the RDK portion of the RLA has been doing inside of the Belgorod region. And it's really just a myriad of all kinds of stuff. You see them taking cover in a foxhole, walking down a road. You see them looking around. This is, of course, around the area of Shebekino. You now see one of them holding up a flag of the RDK and apparently talking in front of a sign that actually says Pench-Aini. I believe that's actually a village. So let's see where that would be in Belgorod. So let's see here. I'm not seeing it. It's not really popping out to me right now. Hey, Matthew. Look at that name.
What?
Man, look at the name of the town. Where do you live, comrade? Oh, man, you wouldn't believe it if I told you. But anyways, moving on into the rest of the montage. We now see them firing an RPG. Oh, well, it appears that they were giving out stickers. Participation stickers. Now see them taking a Russian soldier prisoner. We can see a firefight occurring. We can see their unit moving through the forest near these villages. See them moving through a burning forest, most likely burning due to artillery fire. We can also see a captured Russian soldier right there. It appears they're interrogating him, taking on even more Russian prisoners in this clip. And also, some people are saying this is actually a street name. Man, what's your name on the streets? My name is Pechane. But anyways, let's pull up Pechane Street. Let's see here. Hang on. Maybe we can just find it, because I don't think it's going to be easy to pull up. You know what? I'm going to give up on that already, because I just realized that Shebekino and Novaya Tovolchanka isn't exactly a village. It's a pretty large city. So we won't be pulling up where the street is, but it is a street nonetheless. That's the end of the clip, but that's a little bit of the video footage of what the RLA, or the RDK specifically in this clip, has been doing inside of Russian territory. Moving on to our next clip, we also saw the representative of the Freedom of Russia Legion making a direct statement about what happened in the Novokakhovka Dam. Also, once again, a part of the RLA, but for some, it's kind of getting confusing at this point, I'm not going to lie with y'all, because they were calling themselves both the RLA around 3 days ago, and now it looks like they're kind of splitting the terminology again, and they're becoming the Freedom of Russia Legion and the RDK that are completely separated from each other. So they are a part of the RLA, at least from what they claim, but now they're starting to further separate themselves, and now we're seeing visibly the Freedom of Russia Legion and the RDK as two separate entities, again, just 3 days later. But here is the clip. Tonight, the occupation authorities of the Russian Federation, by order of the maniac terrorist Vladimir Putin, there was an explosion of the Kakhovka Dam. The persons directly giving orders have already been identified. Kakhovskaya HPP is the main hydroelectric facility of the south of Ukraine. Already flooded are many villages and cities. Kherson is also waiting for this soon. The explosion occurred at 6 in the morning on the 6th day of the 6th month. Into the number of the beast. A deep symbolism for the crazy Satanist occultist Putin, whom a huge army obeys, and in whose hands is the nuclear weapons button. The reasons for the explosion are clear to everyone. The Kremlin wants to slow down the advance of the armed forces of Ukraine, and somehow try to escape from Crimea. Hundreds of thousands of people were in the disaster zone fleeing the flood. They are forced to leave their homes, and at best lose all their property. If the situation gets out of hand, and the evacuation will be thwarted by artillery shelling, air raids, or missile strikes, the number of victims will run into tens of thousands. Not only the Kherson region will suffer, but also Crimea. The recent pride of Russian officials, the opening of the Crimean Canal, became a picture of the past. The disaster at the Kakhovka hydroelectric power station may seriously affect the operation of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. It is the largest nuclear power plant in Europe. If we fail to cope with the situation, a nuclear catastrophe will occur. That in its scale, it will surpass even Chernobyl. Huge territories will become uninhabitable for decades, centuries more so. This is the territory of Zaporizhzhia, Kherson, and Nikolaev regions, and the Autonomous Republic of Crimea. While the whole world is now fighting for the environment, tries to live in harmony with nature, and leave a clean planet for future generations, Putin's Russia makes territories lifeless. Dozens of species will disappear, many of which are listed in the endangered species list. After the First World War, the fields of Verdun still have not recovered. After World War II, in the forest they find unexploded ammunitions. Consequences of the war in Ukraine will have to be eliminated for several generations. We call on the entire world community. We must win our common war. As long as the terrorist, Satanist, and occultist Putin is in power, no peaceful or diplomatic solution is possible. There is no happy ending in a horror movie. Putin will not leave on his own. The only way for us all to end this nightmare is to inflict a military defeat on him and to carry out the death sentence. I have the honor. And that is the end of the clip from the Freedom of Russia Legion. But you know something, Matthew, that they brought up in that little clip that I never actually put together? Is that the dam did blow up at 6 in the morning on the 6th day of the 6th month.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, that's not a good number. If any of y'all know, here in America, there's actually a bit of a stigma sometimes that revolves around that number, even to the point that in grocery stores, back when I worked as a cashier, if the total was ever had the number 666 in it, some people would actually ask us to round up the amount of their order so that way it was not that number. There's a lot of superstition that revolves around it, and it is incredibly odd that the dam would be blown up at that exact time. Of course, I'm not one to believe into that kind of symbolism and think that people would do that kind of stuff to spread a message or anything, but that is pretty odd nonetheless. Anyways, with that, we're now going to be moving into Novaya Tavlzhanka, where we can see the spokesman of the RDK, of course a part of the RLA, claiming that they have complete control of Novaya Tavlzhanka, taking complete and absolute authority over the settlement. Friends, for 7 days straight now, fighters of the RDK are in full control of the town of Novaya Tavlzhanka. Aside from us, there is no other authority here. And that's the end of the clip, but we can see there a clear statement being made by the RDK spokesperson or leader that they have now taken complete control of Novaya Tavlzhanka, which has been kind of asserted over the past 3 or 4 days at least, but now they're officially stating that today. We're now going to be moving on out of the area of the Russian-occupied regions by the RLA, and of course, a thorn in the Russian government's side. At this moment, the Russians have to make a decision. Are they going to allow these people to continue to hold Russian territory for however long they may decide, and at this moment it appears it may be indefinite, or will they start to move Russian forces out of Ukraine, already in a very perilous situation due to the counteroffensive, and on into this area in Belgrade to try and crush the RLA and push them back out of Russia again. It appears that so far, over the course of a week, they've decided to allow them to stay and eventually grow into a force that can fight the Russians outright in that area. We're now going to be moving on into the area of our location unknowns. We actually have a decent amount of them tonight, showing a pile of Russian captured soldiers in this clip. Oh, we got to mute that. But we can see some Russians there. And we can hear them getting the Home Depot music going on in the background. And we can now see all of them prisoners just a little bit later. And man, they are putting that tape on heavy.
Man, the Ukrainians, they're the doers that get things done.
Have you ever
didn't get that reference, I guess.
No. I was trying to sit there and think, how in the world am I going to turn that into a Sam Elliott? Have you ever wanted to find yourself a whole bunch of Russian prisoners? Then come to the Home Depot. Everything we have in the Home Depot can be used to capture a Russian soldier. Zip ties, duct tape, 2x4s, anything you need to capture a Russian, we've got it on hand. That's the power of the Home Depot. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news. Once again, great to see that they got some prisoners. And on into our next clip where we saw Ukraine's drone industry in full swing. And this was a very interesting video because it shows the absolute scale that Ukrainian drone manufacturing and the drone industry has gotten to thanks to the war. It's really almost a renaissance in drone technology as we've seen it. But here's the clip.
A drone funded by ordinary people boasts an impressive 1,000 kilometers range. A bionic prosthesis equipped with artificial intelligence can autonomously anticipate precise movements. And naval drones capable of attacking enemy fleet flagships. All this is Ukrainian defense tech. But how do Ukrainians manage to create such distinctive projects amidst a full-scale war? Delfast, a Ukrainian e-bike manufacturer, secured a spot in the Guinness Book of Records for achieving the longest distance traveled on a single charge, an impressive 367 kilometers. After 2022, the company developed a reinforced model of its bike specifically designed for off-road use on the front line. Their website now showcases grenade launcher operators on electric motorcycles. Drones have emerged as prominent players in this war. The battlefield is now frequented by both Bayraktars and tiny black hornets. Military channels are full of videos showcasing commercial UAVs launching attacks on the occupiers using homemade drop systems for VOG grenades. Besides that, it's worth noting that Ukrainians are manufacturing their drones too. Have you ever joined efforts with friends to raise funds for a special cause? The PD-2 drone, developed by Ukrspets Systems, is a prime example.
Dude, they were giving that thing the literal shakedown right here in this clip. Look at that.
Is a prime example as its name, People's Drone, reflects the fact that ordinary Ukrainians contributed the funds for its development. The PD-2 offers an impressive 1,000 kilometers range, powerful optics, and a thermal imager. The PD-2 plays a crucial role in the Ukrainian Army of Drones project, where the state has already acquired nearly 4,000 UAVs and trained over 7,000 operators. Many companies that were previously focused on civilian endeavors have shifted their focus to defense tech. Airlogics, for example, was involved in the development of peacetime cargo drones until last year. However, the full-scale invasion prompted a shift, and their drone named Horus now helps with reconnaissance and artillery guidance. Thanks to such vigilant eyes in the sky, Ukrainians are able to target and destroy enemy warehouses, headquarters, and equipment. However, drones are not limited to the skies alone. In one of the most unexpected operations of this war, an unprecedented naval drone attack targeted the ships of the Black Sea Fleet. While Ukraine did not openly admit its involvement, the raising of approximately $14 million for a fleet of naval drones serves as a subtle hint.
Dang, they got United 24 out here pretty much just saying the Ukrainians were involved in that.
It's like this is Zelensky's project. So like they're gonna know.
Man, on top of that though, I've got to admit, I don't know why, but this little naval drone thing looks like the Batmobile of the seas. Like, it just looks really cool. And also, Matthew, remember way back in the day when these things hadn't even been used yet and one of them washed ashore in Crimea and some Russian took a picture of it and went, "What is this?" And then I went in Russia, "It's an RC boat or something. I wouldn't worry about it that much." And then it ended up blowing up some ships in the fleet. And I was like, Oh, those are not Россия bots, блядь. Those are like literal Ukrainian killing machines. But anyways, skipping back forward in the video, I just had to make a point on that because I remember these things when it first appeared. It just beached onto the shores of Crimea, and everyone was like, what the hell is that?
A subtle hint. While the sky and water witnessed significant advancements, the ground domain is not left behind. Tamerland Company has already made significant progress in developing various models of ground drones and technology platforms. Some of their creations appear straight out of a science fiction movie, such as the jet-powered scooter equipped with pulse engines.
What the hell? What is?
They really
no
made
one's-
this?
Dude, no one's even talked about this thing. Where in the world did this come from? They just sit there, you know, what's it's going to tell you about a couple of things that we're just kind of working on in the background, like this jet-powered scooter. It's like, what the hell? No one's ever told us about this. This is the first time I've heard about it.
That's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool, I'm not going to lie.
Designed for airborne assault troops. However, Russia has also significantly ramped up its utilization of drones recently, and this is where another Ukrainian startup, OnWave, comes into play. Set up in response to the full-scale war, OnWave specializes in developing technologies to jam enemy UAVs through various means, whether targeting a specific UAV, a specific area, or disrupting signals everywhere around. In order to enhance the efficiency of defense tech startups, Ukraine has established an entire cluster known as Brave One. It serves as a nexus, bringing together companies, government entities, the military, investors, volunteers, and the media. Ukraine was inspired by the experience of Israel, Estonia, and the US, like the Defense Innovation Unit by the Pentagon. Areas of interest are artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, automated control systems, space technology, and drones. In addition, Ukrainians pay a lot of attention to rehabilitation and medical services in general. For example, Esper Bionics produces robotic prosthesis based on artificial intelligence. It is controlled by electromyographic sensors that read muscle impulses and transmit commands to the robotic arm. Over time, the prosthesis begins to understand frequently repeated movements and predicts the grip in different situations. Brave One was launched at the end of April, and already more than 200 companies have become involved in the project that has quickly gained global renown. Despite facing an enemy with a significant advantage in brute force, Ukrainians have not only managed to survive, but are also fighting back. And they're fighting back hard, smart, and with tech.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie.
Man, Ukraine's out here trying to become like the next Israel.
Man, they just sat there in this video and just said, you know, we've just been working on a couple of drones. That's RoboCop in the corner. We've just been working on that on the side. It's like, what the hell are you talking about? It's like, that was an insane video. I'm not even going to lie. A lot of that stuff we've never even really seen. And these
Where's the U.S. with all this stuff?
Dude, the U.S., meanwhile, $8 billion later, so we made the small drone that you can fit in your pocket. It has about the explosive size of a firecracker, and you pretty much have to fling it right onto someone for it to work. Meanwhile, the Ukrainians are over there, we're going to make a jet-powered scooter, and we're also going to make everything else. I mean, honestly, I'm pretty impressed with that. That's wild. But with that, we've got to move on to the next clip before I get absolutely shocked by what the Ukrainians are making in the background, according to United 24. And we're moving on to the next clip where you see some Ukrainian soldiers in training somewhere in western Ukraine. Also, I gotta mute this because they probably have copyrighted music in that. But we can see, of course, is the 128th Brigade, which is also fighting in the northern area of the front line right now. See them moving through a forested area, of course, using a drone. We can see them simulating grenade explosions and trench warfare here in this training field. You see them climbing over some cinder blocks and throwing the gear over, and then climbing through some barbed wire. We now see them all holding up a log, of course, a fun activity. We now see them climbing up the side of a building. Man, the polemen who work on electrical lines right now are like amateurs until watching this happen. And we can now see them carrying the log again and firing into the air as they just walk around. That's a very important part of training. We can now see them running through a little bit of smoke cover here, probably just for wow effect. It's always cool looking. We now see them carrying a pole with weights, of crawling under barbed wire in the mud, and of course dragging their rifle through it. I hate to see that. Having just cleaned my AK today, I hate seeing that. We can now see them setting up. We can see them actually dropping a bomblet on them in training, because taking out some of the recruits that are underperforming is important. I'm just kidding. It's a training bomblet. Just letting y'all know. It's not a live one. It's a dud. We now see them going through some trench clearing training, which is probably the most important training they're getting here, and probably something they really need to pay attention to. We can now see them going into some more training. And we can now see what may appear to be this group graduating training. I'm not really sure. I think it is. We see them getting their berets. We always love berets. Matthew, remember back when we were in JRTC, we used to wear berets.
Yes, we did.
Man, I gotta tell you, man. Say it with me, man. Beret.
A beret.
Yeah,
a beretta.
A beretta? Or a Desert Eagle? Or but anyways, with that, we're going to be moving on to our next bit of location unknown news, where we saw a Ukrainian take a video of an interesting shell, a DM-53A1. It's an APF SDS shell, and rumor has it, it's a German one used for Leopard 2s. Don't tell anyone, though. I didn't tell you that. But here's the clip of a couple of them.
Ну так, ребятки, готовтесь. Тут кожен залишив вам побажання. Ось тримайте, дивіться, от від мого кінтюріка. Он від Саші Кондратєва, підра від Молота, за Херсон, за нашу батьківщину, за всіх дітей.
Here we can see we're looking at the APF SDS shells here.
За Київ, слава Україні.
The live chat is going crazy. Oh my god, but that's the end of the clip, and great to see that they have those DM-53 shells. These are APF SDS shells, once again, used by the Leopard 2, and were introduced into German service in 1999. I know, everyone, I'm just kidding with y'all. It's not a beret, it's a beret, but I had to say it because I knew it was going to get the live chat going wild, and it got the live chat going mental. But anyways, with that, we're now moving on to our last bit of location unknown news, where we can see the Russian casualty report. Matthew, do it.
Oh, we got 3. Let's go.
We got 3. Let's see, we got any memes? We got to see if we have memes. Hey, we got one. We got a meme from Nafo Bonker. That's actually what that says in Cyrillic. Neat.
Very
nice.
cool. Followed by Operator Starsky, too. How about that?
Oh, look at that. Dang. What do you know? Man, wait a minute. Look at that. He's followed by Operator Starsky. Impressive.
Nice, nice.
Edward B., do you even lift? KJ, putting another burned out Bobcat. We actually had 3 of them today. We were very spoiled, I'd say indeed. Exactly 3, like the number that was destroyed. And moving on from that, the counteroffensive is starting to produce some numbers that are quite nice in every category. 880 Russian soldiers have ended up meeting their maker, or more so, not meeting their maker. They're probably going to the opposite place, but so they ended up meeting someone today. About 880 of them did. We also saw that the Ukrainians were able to destroy 17 armored personnel carriers, which is about 5 above average. We also saw them destroy 17 supply trucks, which is, of course, quite a nice number. We also saw that they were able to destroy 13 main battle tanks, once again, well above average, with only around 5 being destroyed per day on average. 13 is well above that number. 37 artillery pieces were blasted by Ukrainian counter battery today, once again going to help those offensive forces to push on forward and take the ground in the southern region. We also saw that 7 drones were also destroyed, along with an entire battery of MLRSs. 1 aircraft was shot down. We heard it was an Su-25, but we have never gotten video confirmation of that. We also saw that 1 anti-aircraft system was destroyed. It may have been a Pantsir S-1 from what we heard. And of course, the 3 special equipment vehicles were destroyed, while my esophagus just collapsed for no reason.
Say, it sounded like a gasp, like you're going out.
Yeah, I breathed in, and then my esophagus just said, hey, you know what? Let's just collapse in the middle of that. So it went, I was like, damn. But anyways, with that, incredibly high losses in every single category. This is showing us that the Ukrainian counteroffensive, at least according to the casualty numbers here, must be doing incredibly well. Not the losses or anything to go off of, but they are definitely taking out a lot of Russians. With that, we're now going to be moving on from our location unknowns and on into our frontline news, starting off in the northern area, or the northeast as we call it, near Nizhnya Divanka, where we saw that the 128th Mountain Assault Brigade was taking care of some Russians up there. And we can see them putting some cool effects on the video. We can see the Russian position right there. And we can see some debris flying through the air. Let's watch that again. There's the debris. And it appears that it was a toilet.
Oh, a toilet.
That's what we're going to go with, at least.
Oh, it's literally a toilet on the screen.
And we can now see some of them wandering around as the APC comes over and makes sure to run on over the toilet. Very unfortunate toilet that day. Very unlucky toilet, I must say. But with that, we're going to be moving on from that clip. Nice to see the Ukrainians are taking care of toilets that have been randomly on the front lines. And I got to say, that toilet got some air, Matthew. I mean, that thing went up at least 150 feet up.
Facts.
Man, Estes is going to probably try and get a patent on that thing. But anyways, with that, we're moving on to our next clip where we saw in Zaliman some Russian forces being hit. And also, Matthew, please clarify. But with that, here's the clip. We can see them dropping some bomblets into the tree line. Of course, F1 grenades that are rigged to explode once they have a certain amount of time. We can see that one explode, but it appears, sadly, the Russian got away. What the hell, Matthew? What the hell? Anyways,
I wasn't the only one.
Well, what the hell? Anyway, we're moving on from that. Pal. Anyways, we can see them dropping bomblets onto some Russians inside of the tree line. You see that they're getting a couple of them here and there. You know, a score here, a score there. And Dear Reardon came in all caps. Do you guys pronounce Barrett wrong deliberately? Yes, that was the whole joke. Yes. Yes, that was the joke. But anyways, we can see them still getting Russians in this tree line, and they are running for the hills. Man, imagine going into a bar and you say Barrett like that, and everyone in the bar goes, "We beat every Barrett-saying person senseless in the bar. It's a rule." It's like, man, this is one hell of a bar. But anyways, hey, this isn't the bar association. Anyways, some Russians were taken out. Good to see. We're now going to be moving on from this clip once again in the northeastern area, and now moving on down towards Bakhmut. And over the past 24 hours, we have seen that there has been some progress made in Bakhmut. I'll show y'all right here. Here's the past 24 hours in Bakhmut. Of course, ground made. I love to see it. It's very nice to see. But moving on into the video.
And they might have to shut down the map soon. They can't show anything because of OPSEC anymore.
Oh yeah, they're not showing anything from what I understand here in the south, and it is for OPSEC reasons. You can see that they're not adjusting anything down here. But in the Bakhmut area, because there is no real OPSEC violation in saying what they're doing up there, they're just showing it. And anyways, the front lines move so slowly in Bakhmut, it doesn't really matter that much about OPSEC, at least where the Ukrainians are, because while they are making landfall advances compared to what the Russians are able to do, at the same time, it's not that fast. You know, it's not fast enough that it's like, oh, we gotta, make sure that they don't know where they are. But anyways, moving on to our first clip near Fedorivka, we saw that the Ukrainians were using one of those Vasilic automatic mortars tonight. Sadly, I can't play the audio because it's copyrighted, but we see them firing off this little automatic mortar right here. And some of y'all may be wondering, how the hell does this thing work? Well, it kind of works like a giant semi-automatic rifle. What?
A boonk.
Boonk. Fire, boonk. Boonk. And so with that, that's the end of that clip right there. Very nice to see. And with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little clip in Fedorivka and on down into the area around Bakhmut and Ivanivsky, where we saw that the Ukrainians were able to shoot down an Orlan today with their anti-aircraft defense forces. Here's the clip. Also, let me rewind that. You can see the streak of the missile up there. I mean, you now hear the explosion after it hit the Orlan. Rest in pieces. Well, you now see some parts of the Orlan right here, confirming that it was shot down. And man, Matthew be plugging like there's no tomorrow in that live.
Man, I do. I had to put it up as a banner, so that's why I put it in there like that.
Oh, I got you. And so that we're now moving on to the southern flank near Andriivka, where we saw that the 3rd Brigade has been continuing attacks on Russian forces in this direction today. Let's get out of here. Right, left, right, left. Probably telling everyone where to go outside of the APC. Let's get out of here. Once again, right, left, right, left. We can now see them
confused as hell.
He's trying to put one foot in front of the other. But anyway, so you can see them making their way into the tree line here. Of course, this is around the Klishkivka area. And we see the 3rd Brigade advancing away from the APC and on into the tree line. Of course, the tree line being heavily scarred by artillery fire. You now see one of them heading back to the M113. Go 10 meters ahead of us and cut everything down on the left. Man, this guy is ordering like it's a hamburger. Where's your last one? We are going in parallel. I'll show you where the last one is. I got it. Slowly. Let's go. I'll show you where the first one is. Who is the first one? We're going in parallel on the M line. We need to cut it a bit. The helicopter's coming and shooting at the landing. The left flank! Guys, we need to cut it at 12! Come on, guys! But anyways, we can see them advancing through the tree line and firing as they continue to move forward.
Oh, some ammo.
Oh, look, free ammo. Very nice.
It's like Call of Duty in real life.
We need to cut it at 12! Empty! Reload! Sorry, he didn't say that. But he did say empty. When you see him continuing to fire down the tree line.
Changing mags.
Reloading! Cover me, battle buddy! Guys, there's one here! There are 2 of us! We now see the machine gunner just hanging out. Fish! Jump out to the tree! What the hell does that mean? Like, I don't even know. Jump out to the tree! Tell him to throw a couple of grenades under the cover of the hill.
I think the translator might be a little drunk or something that wrote this one.
Maybe. Fish! Fish! Got it! Empty! Replace! I'm holding it. Are we without a BTR and a tank? I'm covering! I'm going to start reading this off like their video game lines because they kind of sound like them a little bit. I'm covering, battle buddy! I'm not doing that anyway. Guys, we are going to cut it at 12! That's the 3rd time we've heard that. But
Man,
with that,
what the hell does 12 mean? Good lord.
I don't know. 12's in the building! But anyways, with that, that's the end of the clip. And it is great to see that the 3rd Brigade is continuing to push in the Klishchiivka area, appearing to keep it well organized. Meanwhile, there was another video of fighting in Bakhmut. When you hear the firefight, you see a Ukrainian soldier advancing through the open field past this berm. We now hear some rounds flying over as they continue to advance forward into the burned out outpost.
Hey, we got Mark, Field Marshal of the LSA, who says he's going to choose a nice stick.
Hey, he finally got promoted. You now see them moving on into the trench up here. Now see them firing down the trench line. And everyone's telling me that fish is a call sign. Sorry, y'all, I actually didn't pick up on that the first time. But we can see them looking down the trench and, of course, preparing to clear it. Moving on through the outpost, we can hear some rounds bouncing off the ground above them.
Не, братан, я дивлюсь, куди стріляю. Иван, блядь, як дела, нахуй?
We now hear some orders being yelled out.
Пидор!
And now, Matthew, I realize that in all of the confusion of that video, I completely misunderstood what fish and 12 o'clock meant. I'm sorry.
I was being facetious the whole time. I thought maybe you were just joking along with me.
Man, like, seriously, when I just saw 12 and 10, because usually Usually you hear them say stuff like they're to the north and northeast. I thought they were just yelling out like attack lanes or something like that the whole time. Like, we need to move on 12, like the 12th attack lane or something like that. That's what I thought. But apparently it means 12 o'clock, which is direct front. Anyways.
When he said fish at 12 o'clock, it sounded like lunch plans. And I see everyone saying, count me in on lunch.
Man, I gotta tell you, fish at 12 o'clock, fish is really a dinner item, you know? Like, it's not really a lunch item to me, but yeah, I'd still have fish at 12. It sounds like a pretty good meal. Anyways, well, that's the video footage we have in Bakhmut, and of course, Ukrainian forces are still making ground both in the south and the north, as we can see over the past 24 hours. They have been making gains, and hopefully they'll start to collapse the Russian lines in this area as well, although this isn't really where their attention is being focused right now. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from the Bakhmut area and down the line and into Donetsk near Avdiivka, where we saw some Ukrainian tanks pushing forward, and it appears that one of them unfortunately ran over a mine, but the entire crew did survive. Here's the clip. Whoa. Copyright. Watch that. Anyways, when you see the tanks rolling forward, it will be the tank, I believe, at the front of the video here in just a few seconds that runs over the mine.
Look at that wee little Ukrainian flag up there.
Yeah, it's just a little itty-bitty one. Pretty small. And it's coming in just a few seconds, I think 3 seconds or so. See them continuing to roll forward, and we can see that tank right there run over a mine. This tank, the one with the camera, immediately comes to a stop behind it, and the crew in front of them will begin to bail out of the vehicle. We now see their tank. It appears that they're reversing away from the tank that was just hit by the AT mine. And we can see the crew of the tank in front of them now bailing, and they're most likely going to be retreating back out of the front, considering they no longer have a tank. It appears that we can still see the crew up there on the tank. They may be trying to see if the driver is making it out. Now we can see one of the crew members over here. We can see one of them, it appears he's on the engine bay, and another one over to the left. But we can see that all 3 crew members are alive at the time of that filming. With that, we're now going to be moving on from that clip. Once again, brave Ukrainian tankers pushing forward in the area, of course running into danger, but nonetheless dealing with it in stride and being quite professional about the entire thing. Moving on to the area of Pervomaiske or Pisky, we saw that a Senator armored car, one of those armored cars from Canada, was actually knocked down. And I've got to be honest with y'all, it's really bringing into question to me whether these things should be on the front line or not. Now, usually I don't
Who makes these again?
The Canadians do. And they're based, I believe, off of a F-250 chassis, if I'm correct. But take a look at the damage it sustained to the rear of the armored car. That is not good for an armored car. We actually haven't seen that kind of damage on any armored car, whether it be a Kirby, a Max Pro, a Mastiff, a Bulldog, any of them that have been hit, that have been knocked out of action. We have never seen the crew compartment breached until this one right here with the Senator. And that's really throwing into question to me whether this thing is armored enough for it to really be on the fields of Ukraine, because it could be putting crews' lives at jeopardy, considering that it is a very lightly armored car, and it's not really up to the specs of, say, Max Pros or similar vehicles. Really, although, I will say this, any support's better than no support, clearly. These things need to be relegated if this is the kind of damage they sustain when hit. I think these things need to be relegated to units that are in the reserve instead of frontline units, so that way Ukrainian soldiers are not being put in that much jeopardy, and hopefully they can get a safer vehicle like a Max Pro, a Mastiff, a Bulldog, or any other armored car, because that is some very severe damage as far as armored cars go in this war. It was, in fact...
Oh, Canada, will you share the specs with me?
I honestly had to say, they might want to. And we could even see that it appears that the deformation was so bad from the hit, even the lower panel, which has kind of survived intact, also started to cave in a little bit from what we could tell. But yeah, I think this thing might need to be relegated to reserve units, considering that it appears it may not be able to take a hit as well as other armored cars have been able to. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little clip of that Senator armored car, and we're now going to be moving on into, and let me make sure I'm correct here, into Crimea, actually. I had to make sure, because I was thinking, wow, we already covered everything down here, so where in the world do we go? We go down to Crimea. Because many of y'all may have seen that video a little while ago in the Location Unknowns talking about the massive amount of drones and the massive technological leaps the Ukrainians have been making in drone warfare. Well, apparently that sent the Russians on edge because they shot down one of their own drones today over Sevastopol. It's a Mohajer 6. You see it flying up there? And also, let me get y'all a picture of a Mohajer 6 so that way we can identify it properly. Mohajer 6. This is a Mohajer 6. As you can tell, the twin booms in the rear. This is the exact same drone. The exact same one. And it's operated by the Russians. But the Russians are quite scared of Ukrainian drones, and so shoot down their own. Any second now. Some Russian commander just went, "Блядь! Metro!" The Russians will claim they shot down an F-117 Nighthawk over Crimea tomorrow.
Is that a parachute with it?
I think so. I don't know. Maybe that's the
black box.
box.
Suspended in the air or something.
Oh, it's the updraft from the explosion, I think, that's sending it back up in the air because it's hot air being caught by the parachute.
That's wild.
We now see a wing of the Mohajer 6.
The dog was pissing on it. Did you see that?
Wait, no, I didn't. Wait, hang on. Let me go back. Oh my god, it is! It's pissing on it. It really is. Man, that dog even is pissing on Iranian tech. Man, that tells you a lot. If even a dog will piss on Iranian drones. There's the wing of a Mohajer 6. These things are actually massive. And it was shot down by the Russians themselves. Gotta love it. You gotta love it when you see stuff like that happen. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on out of Crimea and on up into Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky. And so, here it is. The one, the only President Volodymyr Zelensky. Slava Ukraini.
Fellow Ukrainians, today, maximum attention is paid to the...
Now I also have to give you all a little bit of a note. I usually don't listen to Zelensky speeches before the streams happen because, you know, it's just something we throw in every night and then I listen to it. But I didn't know they actually have hired a translator for this one. I didn't know that. So we don't even really need subtitles, but here they are.
Consequences of the Russian act of terrorism at the Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant. Dozens of settlements on the territory under our control have been flooded. Thousands of houses. Evacuation continues. Under fire, Russian artillery continues to fire no matter what. Savages. But as of now, more than 2,000 people have been rescued in Kherson and Mykolaiv regions. And I thank everyone involved in this work, everyone who helps. Our task is to protect lives and help people as much as possible. The situation in the occupied part of Kherson region is absolutely catastrophic. The occupiers simply abandoned people in these terrible conditions. Without rescue, without water, just on the rooftops in flooded communities. And this is another deliberate crime of Russia. After the terrorist state has caused a disaster, it also maximizes the damage from it. Now we need a clear and quick response from the world to what is happening. It is even impossible to establish for sure how many people in the temporarily occupied territory of Kherson region may die without rescue, without drinking water, without food, without medical care. Our military and special services are rescuing people as much as it is possible, despite the shelling. But large-scale efforts are needed. We need international organizations, such as the International Committee of the Red Cross, to immediately join the rescue operation and help people in the occupied part of Kherson region. Each person who dies there is a verdict on the existing international architecture and international organizations that have forgotten how to save lives. If there is no international organization in the area of this disaster now, it means that it does not exist at all, that it is incapable of functioning. All the relevant appeals from Ukraine and our government are in place. Many world leaders, heads of state, governments, and interstate associations have expressed their support for Ukraine and clear condemnation of the Russian crime of ecocide. I am grateful for this principled approach. Together, we must bring the occupiers to justice. They have controlled the dam and the entire hydroelectric power plant for more than a year. Russian propagandists were seriously and openly discussing this very scenario of a man-made disaster, which they caused. Last fall, we warned the world about Russia's mining of the Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant. We called for sending an international observation mission to Kakhovka and demining the units in all the plant's facilities. Unfortunately, the world's attention was not enough to ensure all this. Now we must focus the world's attention on eliminating the consequences of another catastrophe caused by Russia, and we must prevent further destructive activity of the occupiers. I had several important international conversations today. Turkish President Erdogan. I briefed him on the situation in the flooded areas, our rescue operation, and urgent needs to help people. Of course, we also discussed the risks to the Zaporizhzhia NPP, which is still under the control of the occupiers. We have an agreement with the head of the IAEA to intensify the work of IAEA representatives at the plant. But it is clear that as long as the occupiers are there, there can be no complete security. Therefore, the deoccupation of Ukraine is a non-alternative task. French President Macron. We discussed in great detail all the consequences of the Russian act of terrorism at the plant and the overall situation. We discussed everything we can do to help people in the affected regions. We also thoroughly discussed defensive actions, as well as international measures that we are preparing in spite of everything, because we need security despite any aggressive and openly insane actions of Russia. Separately, I want to mention a few things that are important for our entire country, and especially for people in those regions of our country that depended on the Kakhovka reservoir. First, we will provide drinking water to everyone, in all regions, districts, cities, and villages where it is necessary. All the necessary supply systems will be put in place where there is currently a delivery of drinking water. Sustainability of supply is the main principle. Second, the world will be with us. Our partners are fully informed about what is happening and what kind of help we need. Whatever the economic, social, and environmental consequences of this disaster, all the basics of life will be preserved. Kherson, Mykolaiv, Zaporizhzhia, Dnipro regions, we see all the problems and will do everything possible and impossible to solve the problems created by the occupiers. Third, the direct responsibility of state and local authorities in all affected communities and regions is to help people. From the government and the state emergency service to regional authorities and local communities, everyone is involved to the maximum extent possible to save and protect as many people as possible. Everyone should take this task personally. And I am grateful to those who do. Let's take care of each other and Ukraine. And of course, today I thank each of our warriors, all units, all brigades that continue to fight the occupiers. The Bakhmut direction, Avdiivka, all of Kortaitsia, all of Tavria, great job. No matter what, every day should be a day of destruction of the enemy. Glory to all our heroes. Glory to all who care about Ukraine and Ukrainians. Glory to Ukraine.
And Hiram Slava.
Man, that guy who was dubbing that sounded like the audio quality was from his parents' basement. But anyway, I was just playing around. But that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky. And that's the first time I've actually heard one of them dubbed over. I don't really know if I like that or not. I don't know if y'all like that or not. Sadly,
I could pass on that one.
Yeah, I could pass on that. Sadly, we don't even really have any control over that going from here forward, because the Ukrainian government just decides to dub them, they're dubbed, and we can't do anything about that. But still, we're now going to be moving on to some of the leading questions of the night, because Rather than asking y'all if y'all like that or not, there are way more pressing questions that are revolving around the news that has been coming out today from really the entirety of Ukraine and everything else involved in the war. And so, Matthew, could you guide us through those leading questions of the night?
All right, so starting off for our final question segment, our very first poll says Ukraine is increasing search and rescue operations after the dam collapse, and will high casualties start becoming known? It looks like 70% said yes, they will, 11% said unsure, 9% said maybe not for now, and 11% said casualties will remain limited. And for me, I would say that sadly, I think casualties are going to start mounting if I get my English to work correctly. Sadly, I don't think there's any way that casualties will remain limited in this situation. The disaster is too widespread for that to happen. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say there will certainly be casualties from a flood like this. There's no doubt about it. Right now, the Ukrainian government has not been able to find these people who have been killed yet, but I'm sure that they will be found nonetheless. They'll either wash out into the Black Sea and they'll be found washing up on the shores near Odessa and Romania, or they'll find them themselves, either drowned in their houses or something similar. If we look at Hurricane Katrina death toll. In Hurricane Katrina, 1,392 people died. And I would say that that actually was a lot slower and a lot less swift than what we've seen at the Novakhovka Dam. There's no doubt about it. There are probably thousands of people who have already been killed down there in the area around Kherson from this flooding. There's no way to avoid that, and I'm sure that we'll start to hear those numbers coming out here in the future. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and it's an unfortunate fact that I think we'll all have to face is that there are probably thousands that will end up dying at the minimum in the few following days after the dam has been breached, and there will probably be thousands more to die after a while has passed, either from a lack of drinking water or something similar. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
In our next poll says, Prigozhin claims Ukrainian troops have broken through Russian lines and calls for mobilization of over 200,000 troops. And what are your thoughts? 75% said he's likely right. Ukraine is kicking ass right now. 10% said unsure. 9% said, I know nothing. And 6% said, no, it's probably not true. Prigozhin lies. And on this one, I would say Prigozhin is probably accurate in this accusation. Ukraine appears to have broken through in many places. We're not going to get into specifics, but I don't think he's lying. But Enforcer, what say you?
He's certainly not lying, because one thing that we have seen about Prigozhin is that he has been honest to a fault, especially about how badly the Russians are doing. And if any of y'all ever need to be reminded of that, let me just remind you of Shoigu, это non prepasna. I mean, like, hell, he has been blasting the Russian government for a few months at this point. I would say at least 2 months. And so I would think that he's probably telling the truth on this as well. And it appears that Russian propagandists are also saying that. So there's no doubt about it. The Ukrainians have certainly broken through. But I don't think the Russians are going to be mobilizing a massive amount of people, at least right now, because then it'll be too connected to what's happening in Ukraine, and then it'll make it look like things are going badly for them to the public in Russia. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And our next poll says, the damage caused by the dam collapse is extensive and unprecedented, and will this affect Ukraine's offensive? 45% said yes, it will. 11% said unsure. 31% said only in a small sense. And 13% said no, it will not affect it. And for me, I think it certainly will affect it. It's not going to ruin their counteroffensive, but it's going to prevent them from moving into the places they really wanted to go. But really, in actuality, I think it won't hurt them that much. But Enforcer, what say you?
I don't think the flood's really going to affect them at all, because we haven't heard of any offensive actions happening in that direction anyways, and it doesn't appear that any were going to happen. So I would actually say that's largely leaving the offensive unfazed. That may as well be in another part of the world as far as the counteroffensive is going right now. So with that, I hope that
I thought they wanted to go to Kherson at one point, though.
Oh, yeah, they did. That was when they wanted to liberate Kherson City, and then they accomplished that. But there hasn't really been any clear plans or any clear intentions to cross the river in scale. We've never seen that. The only thing we saw was some amphibious operations around the river where they ended up taking some of the islands in the river. And then once the floodwaters came in, they evacuated those forces immediately. But that was all. There was really no massive plan to start crossing the Kherson River and begin a counteroffensive there. that has always been in the direction of the Zaporizhia front. And if you look at where that floodplain is, which is down here where these markers are, and where the counteroffensive is happening, which is up here, those are almost two entirely separate parts of the front line, so it doesn't even affect the counteroffensive at all, at least in my opinion. And so with that, I hope we addressed that poll fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our last poll says, will NATO's inaction in response to the dam attack cause the alliance to weaken and embolden enemies? 52% said no, Ukraine is not NATO and it won't weaken the alliance. 16% said maybe in an indirect way it might. 19% said yes, it will weaken the alliance, and 12% said unsure. And on this one, I will say it probably will not weaken the alliance. While it would be good to see some NATO troops go in and secure that power plant, I don't think that because Ukraine is not in NATO, that's going to affect anything. If they were in NATO, it'd be a whole other story, but they're not. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say it's probably not going to affect NATO at all, because once again, Ukraine is not a NATO country, and just because atrocities happen around the world, and of course, while we're heavily invested in Ukraine, that doesn't mean that our alliance in NATO is becoming far weaker because of what's happening there. I would say it probably will have no effect whatsoever, but responding to it will certainly make NATO look like a proactive force of good, but beyond that, if we don't respond, it won't really look that bad for NATO either, unless if it turns into a nuclear disaster a couple of months down the road. Then if we don't respond, then we just look weak. But right now, with the situation we're looking at this moment, right here and today, we don't look weak in a lack of response. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And guess what? We're out of polls, fresh out. So we're moving on to our super chat questions.
I call cap.
There's no cap here. This is straight up facts. But moving on to our super chat questions. Up first, we have a very generous $50 super chat from none other than Jesus UCSB, another channel legend. He says, if there are any government officials listening in, please tell the Kremlin that Jesus UCSB is willing to fight Russia's best fighter. And when I win, the Russians leave Ukraine. The war ends. Zelensky makes me his U.S. ambassador. I'm ready, and make it happen, LSA.
Hey, thank you so much for the support, Jesus UCSB and Jesus Matthew. Keep you out there. Man, I'm telling you, man, it's like that South Park thing of Russell Crowe fighting the world. Like he just shows up on a tugboat anywhere in the world and fights someone. Like Jesus UCSB is that guy, and also
he goes toe to toe with the best of them.
The best, Jerry, the best. But I gotta thank you so much for the support, Jesus UCSB, and also. That is a very interesting offer. If anyone is listening in that is a government official, I would love to see y'all humor that one. That one would be really funny. And if Jesus UCSB was taken up on that offer, I would offer to be Jesus UCSB's fan base leader on the side of the ring and making sure that the whole LSA showed up. I promise. I probably wouldn't be a good boxing coach, not gonna lie. But I would definitely be the one to drum up the hype for it, because I would back you up 100%, Jesus UCSB. No matter who the Russians would throw at you, you would probably win. No doubt about it. And so with that, thank you once again for the support. Long live the LSA, and thank you so much for appreciating this channel and supporting it to help us to keep this thing running, and also being an old guard of the Lee Spring Army. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for helping this channel to be possible.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $25 donation from none other than Casey. And my English skills are completely collapsing. I have no idea why. Hopefully it's not a stroke. But Casey says, tonight is the night of nights. Remember the... now, we cannot read that part. That is very rated R. But he says, damn the YouTube censors.
And I thank you so much for the support, Casey Anthony. And of course, we can't read that because it would not get past the YouTube censors. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I wish we could just say screw it to the YouTube censors. Those YouTube censors, I mean, they're pretty hardcore. I mean, they'll come down here and get you. They'll get you good. And some people in the YouTube world have experienced that firsthand. Some people who've been a little bit too wild and loose with not really caring about copyright laws, they've ended up getting the short end of the stick. And even us, and we've taken a very strong note to copyright laws. We even got copyright striked wrongfully by some wacko channel, and then that all disappeared. But anyways, those wackos from Waco. But anyways, I gotta thank you so much once again for the support, Casey Anthony. And I wish we could say that to the censors.
No, Casey. It's just Casey.
Casey? I thought it was Casey Anthony.
No, that's somebody else. That's completely a different person.
Dang it, dagnabbit. That's like that time that there was Tangen and Tangen Brigiri, and they were two separate people, and then Tangen Brigiri changed his name to Tangen. It's kind of like that. Man, it's tough.
Man, you couldn't have picked the worst name to mistake them with.
Oh, man, I'm telling you, I get no respect around here. Oh, man, I'm telling you. I get someone's name wrong. My co-host calls me out. Oh, man, I'm telling you. But moving on back into addressing that, I'm sorry. For some reason, I thought you were Casey Anthony. You're just Casey. But still, thank you so much once again for the support. We did have a Casey Anthony in here before, though, man.
Nah, we've never had that person in here, ever.
What the hell do you mean? That's
a killer.
Man. Killing it, Jerry. Killing it. Nah, we had a Casey Anthony in here before. Like we did. Really did. I remember way back in the day, we actually answered a couple of questions from a Casey Anthony. And everyone's saying, isn't that a killer? I don't know. All I know is that we had one in here. But I do thank you for the support, Casey. Not Casey Anthony, just Casey. And can you reread their super chat again, Matthew? Because I've gotten completely messed up with the Casey Anthony stuff.
They said tonight is the night of nights, and damn the YouTube censors. I can't read the other part. It's very, very explicit.
And moving on to the first part of that, tonight certainly is the night of nights. It also had the Casey sitting over there right now going, oh man, I get no respect. I support that channel, and they call me a serial killer. Oh man, I'm telling you, it's terrible, real bad. Oh man, real bad. But I'm so sorry about that again. But tonight is the night of nights. It is certainly going to be the night that proves whether the Ukrainians will be able to split the Russians in two. I'm getting messed up now because I'm like, dang it, I hate that I messed up that name. But still, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope we addressed that fairly well. And I hope you got a good laugh out of that. I hope you're not offended by that. I hope you got a good laugh out of that because that was honestly an innocent mistake. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one. But thank you once again.
And also, just to make it clear, I'm being told in the live chat that allegedly they killed somebody, but apparently it looks like they might have been acquitted. But I never saw the end of that case, so I don't know. But that was the allegation.
Hang on. But I'm looking here, and it appears I actually wait a minute, hang on. I've seen this person before somewhere on the news. Let's see here. So was she found guilty? That's what we want to know. See, it appears that she actually did serve time. The state sought the death penalty. The prosecution wished to free herself. Defense team. Let's see. Jury found Casey not guilty of first-degree murder, aggravated child abuse, and aggravated manslaughter of a child, but guilty of 4 misdemeanor counts of providing false information to a law enforcement officer. With credit for time served, she was released in 2011.
Well, damn, that's kind of like the mobsters being in the mob. They don't get locked up for that, but they get locked up for tax evasion.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. But anyways, with that, now that we've got that information to go with, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to CS, who puts in a $20 donation and says, "Glory to Ukraine."
And glory to Ukraine, and thank you so much for the support and appreciating this channel enough to help us to keep this channel running. What the hell's up with us tonight, man? I feel like we both can't speak at all. Like, our English skills...
I don't know. I, fell apart after we came back from the break for some reason. My mind is gone.
My mind is shutting down. And my body is telling me to sleep. But still, thank you so much once again for the support. And Slava Ukraine. And thank you once again for enjoying this channel enough to help us to keep this thing on running. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
And the next one goes to Coral Danilo, who puts in a $20 super chat. And thank you very much, Coral, for the support. He says, if Russia claims innocence on Nova Kakhovka, they should be forced to vote on a UN tribunal to prosecute parties responsible. The terrorist state would veto, like 2015 MH17 tribunal proposal, but show their true colors.
And I thank you for the support, and I'd certainly agree with that. It wouldn't really make a lot of progress on actually holding people accountable, but it certainly would show who has the smoking gun, which would clearly be the Russians. So for that reason, just for the symbolism of it, I would certainly agree with you. That's certainly worth a shot, because it just furthers to help make the Russians look like they're bad folks, and they are bad folks by every single degree. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, and I hope that does address that fairly well. And, of course, thank you for appreciating this channel enough to find it worthwhile to help us to keep this thing running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Marion Deemer, who puts in a $20 super chat and says the power plant must be put under international control and out of Russian hands. They are monsters, and they've shown us that much.
And I thank you for the support, and I'd certainly agree. I would really agree with this as a premise at all, that once a war begins and a nuclear power plant appears that it will be going and turning into a war zone, that a neutral third party needs to come in and maintain a peacekeeping force around that power plant. Because that just seems to be common sense, especially in the modern world, and considering that we'll probably start to see in most countries, either of course this is not being seen now, but I'm sure we'll see this in the next few decades, the resurgence of nuclear power. It would be a very prudent precedent to lay out that there would be a security zone established around nuclear power plants in war zones. So I would certainly agree with you on that. I think that we should step in and we should create a security perimeter around it, so that way the Russians don't end up blowing up or causing a meltdown at this power plant. Because considering what they did at Novokakhovka, it is only a matter of time before they conduct a complete catastrophe at Enerhodar. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well, and thank you for being a part of the Sleep Spring Army, and of course appreciating this channel enough to support us and help us to keep this thing running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Jesus, UCSB once again. This time he puts in a $20 donation. He says, peep the last Twitter post. Ha ha ha. Share my pic and make the Russians run. Show them who I am. LOL. You have my permission.
And where will we find that, man? Where will we find that?
I would go to our Twitter page, and then I would go to our mentions under the notifications tab, and I'm sure that there's a @It's the Enforcer somewhere in there from Jesus.
Let's see. Home. Lists.
And also Freedom Principle said it must be the Canadian wildfire wafting in Alabama. And that could be it. Maybe it's congregating in the basement. Or maybe it's a Freon leak. You never can tell. But when your mind starts going like this, you gotta be concerned a little bit. But
Jerry,
not really.
I think it's carbon monoxide. But anyways, where in the world will we go again to find that, Matthew? Because I'm not seeing it.
We'll see. You hit the bell. If you hit the bell, it's the first thing on the top.
Oh, yeah, there he is. There he is. Again, there's a boy, Jesus UCSB. Look at him. This
Jesus out there looking fly.
Jesus looking fresh with those loafers, the suit pants, and the blazer jacket. Gotta say, nice fit. Respect the fit. And also, this, to all the Russians out there, is the guy that will face you down in the ring. And I honestly think Jesus UCSB would probably be able to, I don't think he'd moited them literally, but he would moited them in their soul in the ring. I think he'd tear them apart. I'm not going to lie. I'd back up Jesus UCSB in a fight every day. And so with that,
I can see Jesus tearing somebody up. He looks like he'd go toe-to-toe.
Man, Jesus is going to be shredding some folks out there. You know what I mean? He's going to get them up there in that ring. He's going to pull out that great shred them like cheddar. That's what I say, man. But anyways, I do thank you so much for the support, Jesus UCSB. And this is the Jesus UCSB, everyone. This is the guy that will end up beating the Russians in the ring. And also, once again, I have to say, the drip is drip-tastic. Not going to lie. Great drip. And also, and thank you once again for support, Jesus UCSB. I was trying to make sure we covered everything there, and I hope we addressed this fairly well, and I hope we put up Jesus UCSB's picture to the entire world, because he is the frontline contender to fight the Russians. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Jesus. I hope that does address that fairly well, and it appears that everyone in the chat is saying that Jesus is dripping, and I have to admit, Jesus is in fact dripping like nacho cheese off the side of the little cups you get when you get one at Taco Bell, and then it gets over everything. Kind of annoying.
I hope that building had flood insurance, because Jesus be dripping.
Jesus be flooding, man. You know what I mean? But anyways, with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope we addressed that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again, Jesus UCSB, for being the LSA's tanker and also the LSA's slugger. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from none other than Joe Little. He says, I just picked up a mint Yugo SKS from my local pawn shop, and I'm impressed in the 1971 production date, and is still loaded with Cosmoline.
Oh, that is cool, Joe. And I got to thank you so much for the support. And I actually used to have an SKS. It was not a Yugo SKS, though, unfortunately. And it also was not a Tula SKS, which is supposedly one of the better ones out there. Mine was a Norinco, or a Norinco, however you want to pronounce that. It was a Norinco SKS. And I got to tell you, man, good luck for you. Hopefully a Yugo SKS is better than a Norinco SKS, because the Norinco SKS was terrible. Like if you loaded the full 10-round magazine in that thing and you fired it, for some reason when it got to the 9th round, it would eject the casing of the 9th round and the unfired 10th casing, well, bullet more so, with it. It was just weird. I was like, ew. Well, let's pull up some Yugo AKs. Well, actually SKSs, and let's take a look at some Yugo SKSs. The Zastava M59 PAP. That's the sound it makes when it shoots me. I think they sat there and said, what should we call this gun? Yeah, there we go. We'll name it that. But here's the Yugo SKS. Not that bad. It looks like every other SKS. But one thing I do like about Eastern, well, more so Western SKSs over Eastern SKSs is that Norinco SKSs have that weird, like, screwdriver-shaped bayonet. The ones that were made by the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact countries and Yugoslavia all had that proper-looking bayonet, which I like a lot better aesthetically. But still, thank you so much for the support. But thank you so much for the support, Joe Little, and of course, helping this channel to keep on running. And I'd have to say, going in kind of like the category of SKS-looking guns, my favorite, just to share it with you, is a MAS 4956. I've never had one of these, and the ammo is kind of hard to find nowadays, but it is a French semi-automatic rifle that was brought into service a few years after the Second World War. It is a semi-automatic service rifle with a detachable box magazine, which is really neat. And I've got to say, these things are neat. I think it shoots a 7.5 millimeter cartridge, though. Let me see if I'm correct. Yeah, it does. It's 7.5 by 54 millimeter French. Or you can get one from, wait a minute, Century Arms makes MAS 49s? Hang on. I ain't seen it. Let's see here. Dude, a Drake. That's the way.
Oh no, they literally call it a Draco?
Yeah, they actually call that thing a Draco. I thought it was always just a nickname they gave that goofy thing, but it's literally a Draco. And then you get the 9
gun that should never exist.
Man, dude, I think they should have given Draco Malfoy a Draco in Harry Potter. It would have just been fitting. But where the hell, like, don't they make other rifles? I mean, I don't remember them just making AKs. They made other stuff, don't they?
I think they do. There's a Micro Draco. That's interesting.
Man, that's expensive though, too.
Dang.
Man,
$1,100 for a gun that's complete junk and you can't aim it. It's inaccurate. It's hard to shoot.
Let's see. Let's check this out. Because I'm not gonna lie, that looks like the North Africa Corps symbol, but they switched out some of the imagery with the US thing. I'm kind of intrigued here about what this is. And it's AK accessories. Hold up, wait a minute. I think this is where I think this is the company that made the Banana Mag, Matthew, that I have.
Yeah, that gray one right there looks like the Banana Mag. It's just different.
So who in the hell in the branding department said, you know, we ought to take the North Africa Corps symbol and just put US on it and that'll work? Like, who the hell came up with that decision? What the hell is Red Army Standard? So it looks like ammo. Is this all?
Why does this website look like they're selling like beach equipment? It doesn't look like it's firearm related.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't look like it's firearm related at all. This is such a weird place, man. I've never really looked a lot at Century Arms. But apparently at some point they converted MAS 49s to Fire 308. But I've never seen that. I physically have never seen that. That's why I was surprised. But anyways, this is kind of, in my opinion, it looks a little bit like an SKS. You know, it's a bit of a stretch, though, I will admit. But I do like the way this one looks. SKSs, though, I think they still look really neat. It's pretty interesting. But still, thank you so much for the support, Joe Little, and sharing that cool little fact with us. And I hope you have fun with that thing. Hopefully, a Yugo SKS is way better than a Norinco. Otherwise, you might be a little disappointed with it, because I wasn't really that happy with my Norinco SKS. But still, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well, and thank you so much once again for enjoying this channel and supporting it to help us to keep this thing on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $17 super chat from Flash1, who says, my thoughts on the dam are, even if the dam was damaged or blown up, it is all on the Russians. The oil from the disaster, all on the Russians. If they hadn't invaded, none of this would have happened.
And I thank you for the support, and I would largely agree that it is certainly the Russians' fault. Really, even at that point, I think it is the Russians' fault, because if the war had not happened, that dam wouldn't be blown up. But even then, we don't even have to worry about just saying they're there, therefore they're at fault. They are clearly at fault. All the evidence is showing that they had to have been the ones to have blown up that dam. There's just no question about it, no doubt about it. They were the ones who did it. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, and I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And thank you for enjoying this channel enough and appreciating it enough to help us to keep this thing on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to BC Skyman yet again. This time he puts in a $20 donation. He says, "Hey, Enforcers, I have the Moss 49/56 and several others you would like. Let's go shoot them and post them on your channel."
Oh
and
my
man,
God.
that's pretty cool, I gotta say.
That is neat.
Gotta go see that. Gotta go. Well, yeah, we gotta go shoot those sometime.
What the man? What in the world are you turning into there? You're like, yeah, I think we oughta go shoot that every once in a while. I was like, what? Whoa, what happened?
It's only going to go down from here, buddy.
I've got to be honest with you. Our speech skills are slowly dissipating as the night goes by. It's pretty bad, really bad. It's terrible.
You want me to take a cognitive test? I mean, why?
I do a push-up, fatty. But anyways, thank you so much for the support, BC Skyman. I can't believe it, man. Not only does he have all the cool cars, he's got a Moss 49/56. I can't believe that, really. That's wild. And I don't think they're that expensive. Let me pull this up on the second screen, though. Moss 49/56 for sale. And let me tell you what the prices are, because a while ago when I looked at them, you could actually get a Moss 49/56 for maybe like $700. Wow, I actually just found one for $700. But the ammo is really expensive for those things, because no one makes 7.5 French anymore. But let's see here. What about Gunbroker? What is Gunbroker saying? Whoa! Oh my God, Matthew, they got a FAMAS for sale.
A FAMAS? How come I can't see it?
Yeah, well, because it's on the second screen. You wouldn't believe the price.
It's like $5 grand or something.
A little higher.
10 grand.
$126,000.
Oh.
You could buy a Sherp for the price of a single FAMAS. That's a pre-banned FAMAS, by the way. But
what's the FAMAS look like again?
I'll pull one up for you. Here is a FAMAS. Also, I'm not wanting to show like guns for sale.
Oh my goodness, $120 for that?
Yeah,
I was like, bullpup.
Yeah, I was like, that's just garbo. I was like, who in the hell would spend like $125,000 for a FAMAS? I could see like $3,000. Yeah, I could see that, but $126,000, someone's got to be out of their mind to like to spend that much on a FAMAS. Just my opinion.
Man, but you could get a Desert Eagle, a few Scars. You could get pretty much every Gucci gun on the planet for the cost of that one.
So it looks like, depending on the kind of Moss 49 that you would want, they're kind of in the range of around $700 to $2,000, depending on the quality of it. And I guess you could say the rarity of its specific make, from what I can tell. But still, oh wait, hang on. How much does this cost per round? Let's see, you can buy $2.50 a round? Golly!
Yeah, that's more than 300 Blackout.
Man, that's more than like 338 Lapua. Golly! Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Ammo for that.
That's crazy.
That crazy, man. Oh God. Like, that is way too crazy. Like, that is insane. I still love those guns, though, and I probably would, like, get a little bit of 7.5 French for it, but you couldn't go out and normally shoot that thing. You would probably go broke if you just wanted to have that as a range rifle or something like that. Just way too expensive. But still, thank you so much once again for the support, BC Skyman. I gotta say, I envy you there. I wish I had a Moss 49/56, because that's a rifle I've been looking for a while, and I've never caught one in the wild, like in person. I've never seen one. But with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And also, I see some people saying it's full auto. I understand that, but here's the thing, though, with full auto guns and the price of them, you know, after the whole Firearms Act of 1985, is that their price is ridiculously inflated for what an automatic really is. It's just, you know, not to get into exact details on YouTube, but it is just one part that is kind of switching the insides of the gun from being able to switch from safe to semi to auto, and it's only that one piece that's really missing. So it's ridiculous to say that one piece adds on tens of thousands of dollars of value to the gun, when in real life that piece probably only costs about $5 to $8 to make in each gun. That's just me. That's why I would probably never get an automatic. because I can never really justify the highly inflated price that automatics are, because it's just way too much. And the demand is so high and the supply is so little because it has to be a pre-1985 gun and everyone wants one. So then they just jack up the prices into like $20,000 for a gun that really costed about $600 to make. But with that, I hope that does address my thoughts on that fairly well, at least in terms of like being economical and everything with that. And with that, we are on to the next one. But thank you once again for sharing that information with BBC Skyman, because that is incredibly cool. And I envy you greatly for owning a MOS 49.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Ryan Cooper, who says, what more ironic is that they lower the water level on undefended spot, giving more open ground for Ukraine to attack uncontested. Nice job to Russia, LOL.
And I thank you for the support. That is true. The reservoir will begin to shrink greatly in size. But one thing I think will certainly be guaranteed is that while that will be happening, it's not going to be easily crossable ground, because it will be heavily saturated with water, and it will pretty much be quicksand for the most part. Anything that goes into that ground will most likely sink into it. So while it's certainly not a smart move for a million reasons, that would actually be really hard for the Ukrainians to try and cross that reservoir even after it empties. But with that, thank you so much once again for the the great support and helping this channel to keep on running. I don't know what the hell is wrong with me. I was about to say mass support, like mass. I was about to just say mass support. But thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much for being a member of this LSA and appreciating this channel and supporting it to help us to keep this thing running, because folks like you help us to keep the lights on. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and moving on to our next super chat, we have a $10 donation from KG, who says, in reference to what Nutsack says is all lies in every direction, I would trust that guy more than I trust walking on broken glass in bare feet. Let Ukraine do what they know to do.
And I thank you for the support. And I would have to be honest with you, I trust Russians less than I trust gas station sushi, which is literally, I don't trust it at all. I've never eaten gas station sushi. But I would say that Prigozhin has been hitting the head on the nail a little bit, at least in terms of statements of truth recently. And so what he is saying in that regard may actually be true. I'd give him a little bit of credit there, because out of the sea of Russian lies, he's actually ended up saying a couple of true statements here and there, which makes him a lot more credible than any other Russian that has ever existed at this point. So with that, I thank you for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. But once again, I don't trust any Russian that much, and I'm only giving him a little bit of leeway there because he's said a few correct statements recently. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Also, Freedom Principle said something I want to get to real quick. He said, full auto is overrated and expensive. It's fun for about 30 seconds. Unless Uncle Sam is providing the ammo, then it's a party. I would have to agree with that as well, because full auto is neat. No doubt about it. Incredibly cool. But there's a reason why in the Army, in basic, they teach every soldier to never fire an auto. It's because it's extremely, it's exorbitant, it's inaccurate, and also on top of that, it wastes ammunition, which is something that quartermasters must always pay attention to. So it's really useless to have an automatic gun, unless if it's a machine gun. Then it makes sense if it's a machine gun, because that's kind of a point of its job. It's just throwing bullets down the way, so that way people keep their heads down. But with a normal rifle, it's just kind of an option that's nice to have, but you don't really need. But still, I mean, like, you know, I get the point of wanting one for the hell of it, though, because it is really cool to say, oh, I have a Stin gun, look, and then you, like, fire and it goes, you know, that's pretty neat. But still, I bet you, I would be crying probably at the end of a range day with an automatic gun, because Matthew and me have no self-control when it comes to ammo conservation, so we would probably end up shooting hundreds of dollars of ammo with an automatic, and we would be crying because, you know, it'd be so expensive. But I would agree, it's only fun for a short amount of time, but it is still cool cool to shoot one, and always cool to have the bragging rights to folks that you have one, because people who are into guns are like, no way, you got one? And it's like, yeah. Anyways, you know, this is actually about to send me down a rabbit hole, Matthew. I said Sten gun. How much does a Sten gun cost? Sten gun for sale.
A stun gun?
Stun gun, Sten gun. How much do these things cost? Machine Gun Brokers has one for sale. Now let's see what they...
Uh-oh. That's going to be ugly.
Oh. $12,400 for a literal tube. Oh, no.
Get the hell out of here.
Get the hell out of here. Do they have anything else that... Oh, what? Pre-May, a bar? Wait a minute, there's no way in hell this is like a real bar. Let's see, 1918, manufactured Northeast Small Arms, very nice condition. There's restricted pre-May sales sample. Related products. Hold up, wait a minute. So a bar, a full-on bar, this thing is actually automatic and everything, you know, so it's only $14,995. A Sten gun is $12,000, and when I say that, of course, both of them are very expensive, but the bar has so much more quality that was put into its design, its construction. It's a more quality product, yet the Sten and the bar are almost not even different in price. Oh, Matthew, oh my god, they have an AR-10.
What's it chambered in?
308. Like, well, all AR-10s are chambered in 308, but it's $45,000.
Full auto?
Yeah, full auto and everything. I don't think Eugene Stoner would be happy with that price. I don't think he would be. But what else do they have? Oh, they have a Sterling. 19,000. I gotta tell you, man, some of this stuff is crazy. They actually have an M16, a Bushmaster XM15E2, automatic and everything, for sale for 19,000. I gotta tell you, man, I can never justify these prices. They're just too expensive. Like, to actually...
Well, let me tell you, since you're on the topic real quick, I do have a poll running. It says if you had to choose, which gun would you pick? 46% said the Scar 17S rifle. 26% said the Desert Eagle 50 Action Express pistol. 5% said the Terran Tactical Pit Viper. And 23% said Honey Badger SBR. And I would imagine that a lot of people probably don't know what the Pit Viper is, or they probably want one. But the Scar is pretty cool. I've shot one. We both shot one, actually, the 308. Very cool. It shakes the ground. The Desert Eagle is ridiculous. It's just a cool gun overall. And obviously, I have a Honey Badger, so I'm a little bit biased. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that out of those options, I would probably end up picking the Scar 17. But if I could throw my own option up there, I'd probably go with an M16 or a Springfield Hellion. I gotta be honest with y'all, I cleaned my Tommy gun today. I know, big shocker. But y'all wouldn't believe it. That thing just sucks all around. I ended up cutting my fingers trying to clean that thing today. It comes apart really weirdly. It's an atrocity. Like, I don't even know how in the world people ended up liking that thing, because everything about it, like, you know, and Jay Bagwell was there with us shooting. They're off doing something. They're not on stream tonight, sadly, but it's not that good of a gun, I'm not gonna lie. And I could see why people were kind of like, you know, instead of having battle rifles and submachine guns, let's just combine them together and get you know, just a standard infantry rifle, because that thing's not good. Matthew can tell you that too. Like, I actually had to call him on the phone. Yeah, because it was in two pieces, and if I got up, I couldn't let it go because it would fall apart. So I just had to hold it there, and I had to call Matthew on the phone and balance the phone at the same time and be like, could you bring out a screwdriver? Because the Tommy gun doesn't come apart on its own normally. Like, you know, you just push out some pins and the whole thing comes apart. No, you gotta get a screwdriver of a specific size and dimension. It's a 1/8 width screwdriver that you have to get to try and take that thing apart. And it's a part of the manual. Like, you have to have a screwdriver to take this thing apart. And so I had to call him and ask him for one, because at the point I had the Tommy gun in, if I got up and tried to walk off, it would fall apart, it would get scratched up on the ground and everything else. So yeah, it was bizarre. I didn't like cleaning it. It was incredibly complicated to clean it, and it's an incredibly complicated gun to shoot and operate. So, you know, it's been glamorized a little bit too much, in my opinion. The Garand is far better of a rifle, or more better of a weapon in the Second World War that the U.S. used than the Tommy gun, in my opinion. Or the grease gun, even. I think the grease gun would end up being better than the Tommy gun in reality. But with that, we'll move on from that, because we're rabbit holing extraordinarily on guns right now. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Freedom Principle, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have another $10 super chat from KG, who says the Russian army is stranded. Ukraine has an opening directly into the Russia proper via Russian separatist movements. The weakness is exposed, and we all know this war won't end without Russia feeling pain.
And I thank you for the support, and I'd certainly agree. The RLA forces are certainly going to be showing the Russians a great deal of pain, especially with the Russian reaction we're seeing right now. And they may even start trying to grow in size, scale, and scope of what they're planning to do inside of Russia. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for helping this channel be possible. Also, Matthew, that guy from Arizona just said Uzi from the wind. I saw like 8 Uzis for sale on that website, and all of them were like $6,000 and $7,000.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the of a Uzi or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and I also saw a Mac 10. You know that
those are junk.
Yeah, that goofy looking box. You know that thing that Hickok 45 was shooting when that meme was made about him on the bicycle.
Oh yeah. It's like, can you add a little design to this maybe instead of just a chunk of sheet metal?
Dude, they sat there and said, "What should the gun be? Stamp." What? Stamp. It's stamp. Yeah, okay. And then he just stamped this thing into existence. Yeah, I'm not really a big fan of the Mac 10. I'm not really that big of a fan of Uzis either, because I know Uzis were a big deal back in like the 80s, but I don't know. A lot of people always talk about they're not really that accurate, they're not really that reliable, and on top of that, they don't really have a lot of style, in my opinion. At least in my opinion. So, you know, I would go for something else. Honestly, if we're getting into this size of like kind of like an SMG sort of deal, I would say that I would go for an MP5 instead. Same size, better quality, it looks really good, and I think they fire just about the same cartridge. I think they both fire 9mm, if I'm correct.
I think so.
Yeah, so I'd just go with an MP5. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. We're once again rabbit holing, but with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Old Warrior, who puts in a $10 donation and says, has there been any new sightings of the Ivan Kirsch?
We supposedly saw a return to Sevastopol with no damage, but that was the only sighting we saw. So we're not really sure if the Ivan Kirsch is okay or not, because some people are also saying it appears that they CGI'd one of the sides of the Ivan Kirsch, because it was almost like a still shot of the side of the ship while it was in port, and it showed no damage, but some people kind of pointed out that that part of the hull where it looked like it was hit on film was discolored and it looked weird, and so they may be trying to hide the damage that was caused and just kind of like airbrush it over in video effects. That's the only sighting we've seen, and we haven't seen it since, so it may have ended up limping back to port, but heavily damaged from what we understand. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, Old Warrior, and of course, helping this channel to keep on running. And also, thank you for being an OG of the LSA. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again for support.
All right, and up next, we have 4 more Super Chats from KG. They're each $10 donations, and thank you up front, KG, for that support. He said, Russia made a critically tactical mistake. They literally, excuse me, I'm choking here too. They literally played into Ukraine offensive by draining the reservoir and upstream rivers, making river crossings so fast for Ukrainian forces. Now Russia has marooned ...
And I would certainly agree with everything you've said so far. They've certainly screwed themselves over by blowing up that dam. And there may be a possibility of Ukrainians crossing the reservoir, but once again, they have to deal with that slushy ground, and that's going to be really tough. But with that, I thank you so much for support. I hope I addressed that one fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And we have that second one from KG. This one says, Ukraine knew that a few attacks and Russia will fold and demolish that dam. It has marooned entire armies while the path clear is up north and directly into Russia.
And I thank you for the support once again, and I'd agree with that as well. They are screwing themselves over in the south in every direction, both to the western side of the front and directly south of Zaporizhia. And at the same time, we're not seeing them moving any of their reserves into Russia itself. They're just allowing the RLA to sit around and do whatever they want. Which is certainly posing a great security risk to Russia. I'd certainly agree. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for support. And with that, we're on to the third one.
All right, and the third one says, there was no way for Ukraine to fully assault a 1,000-kilometer front line with Russia so dug in. Ukraine relied on Russia being so stupid and egregious, which they did with glee.
And I'd agree with that as well. They most likely have been counting on Russian stupidity for a large part of this war, and that's why they've been so successful. Because if it wasn't for Russian stupidity, corruption, and incompetence, I think the Russians actually would have given the Ukrainians a really good run for their money, but they haven't at all over the course of this whole war. And so with that, thank you once again.
They're stupid and egregious with glee.
Very stupid and egregious of these poor little cretins. Oh, Ginny, it looks like they're running for the border. And oh, looks like we've got a flying man. Oh, look at him go. He's just flying through the sky so gloriously and brilliantly.
But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the last one from KG.
And Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm Canadian. I'm polite.
Well, then we'll go right ahead. The last one from KG says, "Now watch that northern river border as it drains and makes river crossing very fast. No wonder why so many bridging systems donated." Wink.
And I thank you so much for the support. And we may see that. I'll be very interested to see if that does happen, and that'll be very interesting, Matthew, if the reservoir empties out, and then the Ukrainians literally just walk across the reservoir pretty much straight to the ZMPP and go, "Hey, give it over," and the rest is like, "What? Oh, wait a minute, they're not supposed to be able to do that." But still,
man, what if a shark jumps out of the water and says, "Blow up,
blow up"? Man, that's it. Then the Ukrainians will be going, "We call on NATO to help us. Please help us." He's going to blow up the nuclear power plant. But with that.
Or the point of the shark and say, "That's Cap."
Dude, that's Cap on God. But still, with that, thank you so much for the support, KG. And I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for supporting this channel and helping us to keep this thing on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, this wouldn't have been possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $10 super chat from Ozono7691, who says, "Hello from Staines in the UK. I woke up earlier today and managed to listen to you live. I enjoy so much you're streaming every day that I never miss it. And Slav Ukraine."
Hey, thank you so much for the support, all the way from the LSA in the UK. And what town is he in?
Staines.
And how do you spell that?
Like stain, but with an ES at the end of it.
Wow. I thank you so much for that.
Maybe Stainies?
Steinies? Oh, he's near Heathrow.
Redneck. Oh my goodness, that's very loud around there, I'd imagine.
Nah, man, because look, Windsor's over here. That's where the royal family lives almost year-round. And they're literally under the flight path of the planes coming in.
Well, it was kind of loud over there.
Man, it wasn't loud. We fell asleep in that hotel, like, right near Windsor really easily, and we didn't hear nothing. And anyways, Mandy, don't you know about the sound regulations at Heathrow Airport?
Yeah, I'm sure there are.
Like aircraft coming into Heathrow actually have to cut off their engines completely and pretty much glide into the airport the entire way in. So there's almost no sound whatsoever. That's why you don't really hear the jets around there.
That's kind of weird.
Yeah, pretty cool though. I'm not gonna lie. But anyways, he is from Staines upon Thames. Pretty cool. Hopefully we're saying that right. I'm sure it has probably like some Anglo-Saxon pronunciation where it's like Stens upon Thames or something like that, but I wouldn't know that. But very nice station, like the station, nice and high quality. We also got a little park here, very nice. I like that. That's actually a really nice park. We also have a church. This almost looks like a church that's in downtown Birmingham, actually. Really nice looking. I like. Nice little park on the Thames. Gotta love the Thames. Although down in London, it gets very nasty really quickly. Up here, though, it's nice. I like it. And they got a nice little town. This is a nice town. I'm not going to lie. Property values here, this home is probably £4 million.
Dang, it's a lot of weight.
Man, that's a lot of weight. Man, you know, my 600-pound life in the United States and in the UK has two totally different meanings. One is a great impoverishment. Here in the US, it's just something totally different. But still, I like this place. Let's look at Street View and let's just look at a random spot. Like here. What is this?
My goodness.
My goodness. This looks like something straight out of Doctor Who. I'm not even going to lie. But this is actually a pretty cool town. Now look, there's like the Market Street, I would suppose, and it's not really for road traffic, but still, I'm liking it. Pretty nice. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, and thank you for enjoying this channel once again, all the way from Staines upon Thames. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly again. But thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for watching this channel each and every day. I know that's really tough for our British viewers, considering that y'all have to wake up at pretty much like 5 in the... Well, actually, earlier than that, it's like 3 in the morning for y'all to watch this show. But I'm greatly honored to know that you enjoy it so much that you get up each and every day, pretty much at 3 in the morning, to watch this show. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And I saw Fuyuma say that they cut off the engine during takeoff. Interesting. I guess they prioritize the sound levels, I guess.
Man, they're not cutting off the engine during takeoff. What the hell? How in the world would they lift off, Matthew?
I guess they just hope and pray.
I mean, Wait a minute, no. Yeah, actually, they do. I just thought about that. They do.
Wait,
Because
they do?
Yeah, they rev up to pretty much full throttle, which actually you don't normally do when taking off in an airplane. And that's why the angle is so steep out of Heathrow. If you remember, Matthew, like they pretty much just go at a 40-degree angle straight up, and then once they get to a little bit of a certain height, they actually cut the engines back, and then I think they go to like a 20-degree climb. Or a 15-degree climb for a little bit, and then once they get high enough, they go back up to a higher throttle on the engines, and then they continue to climb on out. So that way they can once again regulate the sound levels outside of the airport. So while the sound is loud at the airport, it's not that loud once the aircraft actually lifts off, if I remember that correctly. Correct me.
Well, I'm glad they got their priorities straight. I guess sound is more important than safety.
It is. It really is. Because think about how obnoxious it is around Atlanta International Airport with all those jets constantly taking off and landing, and they just throttle whenever they want, and it's just loud as hell around there. And it also decreases property values as well, which is probably a big deal that they're trying to concern themselves around Heathrow with, because the more affluent end of London is the west side of London. So they're probably also trying to keep the property values on up there, so they're not allowing the engines to be as loud coming in and out of the airport.
That's wild to hear. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Heathrow's huge, by the way. It's a big old white splotch over there next to London.
Yeah, it's massive. I mean, this thing is huge. And what's weird, a very interesting fun fact, kind of rabbit holing again, is that Heathrow Airport is one of the few airports in the world that is at its size and has the amount of air traffic coming into it that only has 2 runways. It is actually massively under runwayed, and there's been plans for years to go and build a 3rd and 4th runway somewhere out here near the Waysbury reservoirs, kind of closer to Windsor. These have been thwarted multiple times at this point because the folks in Windsor and everyone else doesn't really want the airport to increase in size like that, but Heathrow kind of demands it. So there's a lot of back and forth there. As opposed to Atlanta International Airport, which is, I think, one of the busiest in the world, that has like 8 runways. Here's Atlanta, also called Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, but it has...
a dreadful airport. Oh my.
Yeah, oh my. It is a tough airport. Like, it's a tough one to be in. It's a tough one to enter to. It's a tough one to leave. It's a tough one all around. But I think they have 8 runways at Hartsfield Jackson. Let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Wait a minute. I swear they have 8 runways. Am I miscounting? No, I'm not. They only have 5. Dude, I swear for my entire life I've heard people say they have 8 runways. They only have 5. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Massive rabbit hole, by the way. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Colleen Emsley, who puts in a $20 super chat. And thank you, Colleen, very much for that support. She said, hello, and thanks, guys, from Colding Lake. Just in from fishing with the guests. I'm still waiting to catch Uncle Grandpa over the 100-centimeter walleye. And that's good to hear, Colleen. And I have to ask you, are you close to those fires up there that are absolutely, I guess, devastating New York right now?
In New York?
The smoke is.
Oh, no, they're all the way, like, almost across the continent. So they're fine. I mean, Colding Lake is all the way up here. Like, keep that in mind. All the way up there.
Where's that fire at?
A fire's, like, down here. They're not affected at all, man. They're farther away from the fire than we are.
Well, that's good news. I'm glad to hear you're okay, Colleen.
And I'm very glad to hear that you were okay as well. And moving on from that, it is great to hear that you've been having fun fishing today, because it is always fun to enjoy a little hobby and a pastime. And I hope that you catch that walleye soon. Of course, I hope it's not the AGM walleyes. Let me see if I can get one of those on screen here. Yep, the AGM 62 walleye. If you catch one of these, let me know, because I'd be very interested where you're catching them. But still, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you, Colleen, make this possible. And it's great to hear that you're checking in, and it's good to know that the fire didn't make it over to you, because I remember a little while ago you told us that there was a fire on the other side of the lake, and it's good to know that it didn't make it all the way over there to your side. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you for helping this channel to keep on rolling.
And also, a fun fact for the Enforcer. Did you know that right now in New York, the air quality is the worst in the world? It's worse than New Delhi, which is typically really well known for having horrible air quality. And right now, if you spend 24 hours in New York City breathing the air, In 24 hours, you have basically breathed in the equivalent of smoking 6 cigarettes because of how thick that smoke is.
Dang, man. That's pretty wild, actually. It's insane. You know, in China, they actually have to tell people to stay inside because sometimes the air quality gets so bad that if you went outside of out of a pretty much like ventilated or air conditioned building, you would pretty much die from the smog.
That's what's happening in New York as well. If you walk outside, your lungs and stuff are going to be burning and your eyes are going to be tearing up.
Dang, man. That's wild. I didn't know about that, actually. So with that, thank you for the fun fact, Matthew. Very, very educational. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, no, that's not effing cap. That is actual fact. But anyways, moving on to our next one. It goes to Ken Harrington, who puts in a $10 super chat and says, need airboats with 50 cal.
I would say that would be cool as hell. Dude, the people in the bayou, man, would be going insane, man. There would just be some gator chilling on a log, and then you hear, and the gator go, what the? And then just right at it. And you'd be like, oh my god. That would be really cool for Ukraine to have 50 cals on airboats. Or, yeah, pretty much airboats. That would be cool as hell. So with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
All right. And our next one goes to Ryzen 8, who puts in a $10 super chat. And thank you very much for that support. He says, given how effective cheap drones have been in taking out multi-million-dollar hardware in the invasion of Ukraine, how has this changed how future wars will be contested by nations across the world?
It's probably going to change how anti-drone warfare works. Well, really drone warfare as a whole. I think it's going to add a whole new level, kind of like how aircraft added a whole new dimension to warfare. Drone warfare is also going to be doing the same. So now armies will have to, well, militaries around the world will have to figure out how to implement anti-drone technology into practically everything and make it a part of their armed forces. Kind of like how aircraft became a part of strategies, planning, and warfare itself about a century ago at this time. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, Ryzen8. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $7 super chat from Banana Boat 30 Plus. He says, hey, mates, the song that is a perfect summary of these events are Don't F with Ukraine.
And I thank you for the support. And I have heard that song before. And I would have to say, yeah, it's a pretty good summary, I'd have to say. Not really quite my style. As some of y'all may be wondering, like, where in the world do we come up with the first 3 songs we play in the intro? And that's actually songs that I like. That's kind of like the style of music I like. So, you know, do with that what you will. But still, I would agree the lyrics of that song fit what's happening right now. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Putin will hang in the middle of the Kremlin, who puts in a $7 super chat and says, question from the chat, please.
And we will. And thank you so much for the support. Putin will hang in the middle of the Kremlin. You are an old guard of this channel. And so with that, let's get a live chat.
And the live chat question goes to Margaret Hemsley, who says, how relevant is the UN when all they do is celebrate Russian Language Day and tweet that damn was a naughty thing to do?
I would say that the UN has never really been a relevant force in the world unless if it's a humanitarian goal. They've never been an enforcing power or anything similar. They're practically useless beyond the symbolic level of having an international forum that all countries can meet in and talk about stuff. Except for Taiwan. They're one of the few countries that aren't allowed in the UN. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and I thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Carlo Matulla, who puts in a $5 super chat and says, I married a Ukrainian. What's your superpower?
My superpower is, I don't have one, actually. I don't have a superpower at all. But very interesting to hear that you have a superpower of a Ukrainian wife. And so with that, thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to CK Bold, who puts in a 5 and says, take a lice chat question, but I think it meant to say live chat question. And of course, we will grab a live chat question, CK Bold, and thank you very much for that support. And the question goes to Old Warrior, who says, is there the equivalent of the Red Cross in Ukraine?
Yes, they actually have the Ukrainian Red Cross, and the International Red Cross operates there as well, and the American Red Cross has also been over there and helped out on top of that. So they do have the Ukrainian equivalent of the Red Cross. It is the Ukrainian Red Cross. And so with that...
Isn't the Russian Red Cross in there too?
No. No.
Oh.
No, they're not there. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and I thank you so much once again for sponsoring that live chat, and I hope we addressed that fairly well. And with that, we were on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Mank Two Wheeler, who says, "Why is there no work on Putin's offspring? Everyone knows that parents' weakness is their kids. Seems an opportunity."
Probably because that wouldn't be looked well upon by the world that you're threatening someone through their children. We usually
Yeah,
look
that's
at
no good.
we usually look at the Russians and say, "Man, look how sick they are. They'll threaten people's families to make them do what they want." So we would be about as bad as them if we did that. So that's probably why no one's going in that direction. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you once again for the support.
All right, and the next one goes to Russ Rizzo. He puts in a 5, and he has a Rodney skit. So, Enforcer, take it away.
Oh man, I'm telling you, I got a crazy doctor. Oh, wait, we're gonna start that one over because that was a voice crack in the middle of doing your Rodney. That was bad. All right, take 2. Oh man, I'm telling you, I got a crazy doctor. He told me to keep smoking if I want to stop chewing gum. I smoke after beep. I got the same pack now since 1975. Oh, man, I'm telling you, it's terrible. Oh, man, my life that way is terrible. Oh, man, I'm telling you. One day, I was walking down the street. Oh, man, I'm telling you. It was bad, real bad. I'm not even going to tell you what it was. It was just bad, real bad. Oh, man. They treated me like a pig. They porked me. Oh, man, I'm telling you, it was terrible. But with that, we're on to the next one. Thank you once again for the support, Russ Rizzo, and I hope you enjoyed that fairly well.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Vlad Lozo 11111. And thank you, Vlad, very much for the support. Sadly, no comment to address, but we do appreciate it very much. And
keep going, I'm fine.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Trister1, who says coffee and Ricola.
Thank you so much for support. The coffee and the Ricola. Because I probably do need a Ricola because I just almost went into a coughing fit right there. And then Matthew had to, of course, awkwardly stop. What the hell was that? That was not the word awkward. That was awkwardly. Awkwardly stop. So that way I had to sit there and tell him, no, just keep going. I'm fine. But still, with that, thank you so much for the support. Thank you for the coffee and Ricola fund because we certainly need it right now. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much for helping this channel to keep on rolling.
All right, and up next we have a $5 super chat from Dark Warrior 137, who says, "You can tell what an opponent fears by his choice of weapons. Russia uses lots of water from fear of burning in the pit of hell, reserved just for them."
Dang! Oh my god, that was a raw line. Matthew, take a note. We're gonna have to remember that line going forward. That was a good one. And I gotta thank you so much for the support and sitting at that roast, and that's really all I got on that. So that, thank you once again, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to John Zayadi. I'm not really sure how to say it. But John puts in a $5 super chat and says, what has to happen to have Russia removed from the UN Security Council? I'd say they, after all of this, don't belong.
I would agree. Sadly, there's really no way to remove them because that would have to be a vote that goes up to the Security Council. And if a single member vetoes that vote, it can't happen. So they would always be able to veto the vote that would kick them out of the Security Council. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And I thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, the carbon monoxide poisoning is getting to us. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one in the last super chat goes to Dupper Bob, who puts in a 2 and says, Slav Ukraini.
And Slav Ukraini. And thank you so much once again for the support, Dupper Bob, and helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, I hope we addressed that fairly well. And was that the last one, if I heard that correct, Matthew?
Last super chat.
All right. That is good news. That means we have about 22 minutes to address. Oh, man. Oh, man. Oh, I'm telling you. Oh, man, it's terrible. Oh, man, I'm telling you. Listen to me. I'm telling you something. Oh, man, I'm telling you. It's bad. Real bad. They disconnected us. Oh, man, that's bad. Bad. Bad makes me crazy. Oh, man.
It's still disconnected?
No, we're actually back. I've been doing that for like 30 seconds and we've been back. But anyways, we're now on to the Morse code message again.
And the Morse code message said, do not help the enemy. Keep sensitive information to yourself. Glory to Ukraine and long live the LSA.
And that's the sound of money. Hey, you got that thing correct. That is the message. Make sure to keep sensitive information to yourself. Don't share it around because that ends up helping the Russians. And so with that, thank you all for deciphering that Morse code message on day 469 of the stream. And with that, we were on to the next one.
Oh, I'm telling you. And up next, we have a question from I Am Gift Bearer, who says, "What happened to the powerful piece made by the Ukrainian army that you had in the introduction a few days ago?"
We ended up removing it because it started to make the intro so long that it was even getting really long for us behind the scenes. So we decided to remove it to once again try and make the intro a little bit more lean, because right now it's about 13 minutes long, and adding that in, it made it about 15 and a half minutes long. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And also, oh man, I'm telling you, I get no respect around here. Alan said, hey, stop being Rodney. Stop talking like Rodney. Oh, man, I'm telling you. I get no respect around here. I can't just be me. I can't be who I am. Oh, man, I'm telling you. People are always trying to push me down and hide who I am, Matthew. But one day, it's going to boil out to the surface. And people are going to put me in the padded room. Oh, man, I'm telling you. It's really going to be that way. Oh, man. But anyways, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Fuyuma, who says, "With all the talk of F-16s and F-18s, what about those mighty A-10, Bliat? Those are true beauties."
But I would have to say the A-10s are probably not going to be sent to Ukraine, because I think even the folks in the Department of Defense are thinking that those will probably not be a good fit for the Ukrainian armed forces. But one day we may see them sent over. It'll probably be a good ways or a well ways down the road after now. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one, I'm falling apart tonight. The next one goes to Sick of Games. He says, "I thought the Leopard 1s were supposed to arrive by now, and have you heard anything about those arriving yet?"
I don't think we've heard about them arriving in Ukraine yet, but we have seen them arrive in Poland, so they are on the next step there, but they haven't made it yet. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Sheriff Van Foot, who says, "How effective are those unguided rockets fired by helicopters?"
They're largely ineffective because of the range they're being fired, and also the angle. There's a decent amount of spread and a good chance for them to veer off target, so they start blanketing a massive area, and that's of course a lower volume of fire over the given area, so it's a lot less accurate and a lot less effective. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Timothy Walker, who says, "Enforcer, are Russians trained to swim in basic?"
I don't think they are. I think they just drown. So with that, I hope that answers that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
They just throw them in the swimming pool and yell, "Shoots! Swim! Shoots!"
Man, they sit there, instead of saying stroke, they go, "Shoots! Shoots! Shoots!" But with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. I don't know why in the world I say that after everything in the question segment, but with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Ted B, who says, "Do you think the imminent meltdown of the nuclear power plant will bring bipartisan cooperation to address it?"
I think it will. And so with that, hope that does address that fairly well, and we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to AF Kaplan, who says, "Have the floodwaters reached Oleski Sands?"
Yes, they have. They've ended up flooding Oleski so we can hear each other.
Yeah, that's kind of odd.
Yeah, but now we've reconnected. But there is an endangered mole down here in the Oleski Sands area, and a lot of people are making a big stink about it because that's the only place in the world that it exists, and all of the examples of the species may end up dying in these floods. So it may end up being a extinct species.
Here's my thing. Like, I do sympathize that the animal is at risk, but when you have people at risk, is it really appropriate to make a big deal about a mole when you have people potentially dying?
Well, a lot of people are always focusing on a million things, but, more precedent should be put on people than the moles, because I think everyone's kind of drowning the same right now, the moles and the people included. So I would say it's, it probably is more prudent to put focus and emphasis on the folks rather than the moles, but still, there's billions of people around the world. What is there, like 8 billion people alive, and there's only 20,000 of those moles. So the people are making stinking about making a stink.
I hope the moles live, but I think between the two, I think the people are much more important.
I would agree. And so with that, hopefully I addressed that fairly well, and we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Peter M, who says, "Who controls the dams upstream?"
The Ukrainians control all of the other dams upstream in Zaporizhia, Dnipro, Kremenchuk. I believe there's one near Cherkasy. Pretty much there's a dam wherever there is a major town along the Dnipro. And also there is one just north of Kyiv right here, which is the Kyiv hydroelectric power plant, 409 megawatts. They actually put the the voltage that this thing will produce, or the electricity it'll produce, in the name. And so with that,
That's nice.
Yeah, that's very nice. So you just sit there, man, you go, I wonder how much power that power plant makes. Let me look at the name. 409 megawatts. It's like, oh, okay, thanks. But with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $2 super chat from Dark Warrior 137, who says the Lag Spring Army sends its regards.
And I thank you for the support, Dark Warrior 137. It's a dark day when the Lag Spring Army returns. And with that, thank you once again for the support. Hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and let me try to get my spreadsheet to cooperate once again. Our next question goes to Parks White, who says, will Ukrainian forces or Russian militias consider an offensive against the Russian troops in Transnistria and Slav Ukraine?
They may, but we probably won't see any Ukrainian involvement in that, and that may be an entirely internal Moldovan affair, at least at this moment in the war. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
The next one goes to Asel, who says Polish Volunteer Corps is in Belgorod region. Do you think this will cause problems for Poland with Russia?
Nah, I don't think so, because they're not really representing the Polish government. I think the Polish government has kind of made that clear. It hasn't really been massive statements, but I think they've made that about as clear as possible. So I don't really think it'll be affecting them all too much. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Intersubjective, who says, should Ukraine push into Transnistria if they can get a easy win since the Russians can't push up from Crimea?
I would say nah, because it's really a waste of resources, because they're never going to attack the Ukrainians from there. There's no way to resupply those forces, and once they take losses, there's also no way to reinforce the losses that they take, so they probably would never attack from there. They're pretty much just stuck there and sitting there, so it'd be a waste of Ukrainian resources to take care of a problem that really doesn't exist for them at the moment. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Tank2, who says, were you aware that a Ukrainian game developer is selling a game on Steam that involves flying drones and dropping munitions on Russians, and it's called Death from Above?
I think I have seen that game before, and I have, I liked it. I thought it was pretty cool. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, Tank2. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Mark Hooper, who says, do you and the Enforcer think there will be a time when our favorite Ukrainian president talks to Russians in his nightly talk and asks them to rise up against Putin? I think he might have already done that in the past.
Yeah, I think he's done that several times, actually. So I would say yes, I think he'll do it again. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to AD, who says, with the counteroffensive starting, what is the risk of attacks on any nuclear facilities in Ukraine? Would Putin push it that far? And what would be the world's response if so?
I don't think there will be any attacks on Ukrainian nuclear power plants, but I certainly think they will be attempting to meddle with one of the ZMPP that is under their control. Because there, they can kind of deny that they were directly responsible for it, and it was the war, they can blame it on the Ukrainians. You know, there will be enough chaos and confusion revolving around that, considering it's pretty much in a war zone, that they can kind of get away with that. But sending a missile flying right into a Ukrainian power plant, nuclear power plant that's not on the front lines, that would clearly be the Russians to blame, and would probably bring in direct intervention by the West, no doubt about it. Also, Matthew, I have to know what that person said that you hid.
I have no clue what they said, but we can't read that here.
It was sus.
It looked weird.
But with that, I hope we addressed that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Told Me. And they said, Enforcer, I was thinking about raising money to buy some of those machines that make clean drinking water from air. That might be extremely helpful for Ukraine. And what are your thoughts?
I would think it would probably be pretty helpful for Ukraine. Really anything as far as water purifying in that area will probably be very helpful for them. Life straws, anything for that matter. That would probably help out a great deal. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Plexus Gaming, who says, with the dam gone, there is more water available downstream. What do you say about Crimea having enough water now?
Oh, they certainly will not have enough water, because that water is contaminated with just about anything you could imagine, and then it's going into the Black Sea and it'll become salt water. So it is nothing they could use, and they're screwed. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Beef Taco, who says, a lot of the drones look like they're falling just short of the actual target by a few meters, and are the explosive packages big enough to take out the targets?
They may look like they're falling a few meters short, but the momentum of the drone actually sends it usually right into its target, because we were able to confirm that with a second drone watching that one collide with the target. But still, the explosive mass is large enough that if it's trying to go for an infantry group, even landing a few meters away, they can still end up injuring or taking out a good amount of the infantry. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and just to let you know, we have 2 questions left in the spreadsheet.
No.
So the next one goes to Flight Sergeant Richard, who says, "I predict that the Russists will use one of their tactical nukes on their own people." And he puts in the Canadian flag.
I honestly think that they're going to use one of their nukes on their own territory. I'd have to say there's probably a higher chance of that than them using it in Ukraine, because that would be a way to send them a message to the Ukrainians without directly nuking them. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the second to last question of the night.
This one goes to Dark Warrior 137, who puts in a 5 and says, "Honestly, with the dam busted, it's pretty much a non-explosive WMD. Russia is trying loopholes in NATO's warnings, and I think we should get involved." And I would have to agree.
And I thank you so much for the support, Dark Warrior 137. I'd certainly have to agree with that, because at this point they're trying to play ball, and I think we gotta tee it up. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we're on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who asked the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Plexus Gaming, who says, "Considering how unfamiliar the Ukrainian forces are with Western tech, do you think this war would be over if the West sent troops early in the war?"
I certainly think it would be over if we got directly involved in the war early on. There's no way the Russians could pair up to the U.S. Army, or even armies that most folks don't look at, like the Polish Army. If it was just the Polish Army that had shown up in Ukraine, I think the war wouldn't have lasted as long as it has right now. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And it is the end of tonight's stream. I thank you all so much once again for watching. Of course, if you did enjoy, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It, of course, helps this channel to keep on running. And it also keeps you all apprised of the war news, which runs 6 days a week at 10 p.m. Eastern Time every single night, except for Monday. We also run short war summaries as well, although in the events of massive counteroffensives, like we kind of saw on Monday, we kind of curtail our daily war summaries like that, because we don't want to violate operational security blindly in some instances. Also, I would like to address the super chat just sent in by Fabiano that said, "Way laggy, but having lots of fun with your dubbed Russian accent." And Forza Matt, Brazil sends its regards. Slava Ukraini. And thank you so much for the support, enjoying this channel as well, and also enjoying the Russian accent, because I try my best, bled. Man, I'm telling you, I get no respect around here. I try and do this voice, but nobody like it. Oh, man, I'm telling you, bled. I get no respect, bled. But still, with that, thank you so much once again. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army.
And good night, and Igor!
Igor!
Yes.